High above the frozen earth, the winter sky is a canvas of deep velvet indigo, pierced only by the cold, brilliant diamonds of distant stars. A full moon hangs heavy and silver, casting long, ink-black shadows across a forest of ancient towering pines. The air is so crisp, so entirely still, that the world itself seems to be holding its breath. Every branch is heavily laden with pristine, undisturbed snow, glowing with a soft, ethereal luminescence in the moonlight. There is no wind, there is no sound, just the infinite, peaceful expanse of the night. From the highest canopy, a single shadow detaches itself from the darkness of the pine needles. It is a silhouette of perfect grace, banking softly against the silver light, floating downward like a falling leaf, entirely weightless, entirely silent. As you watch this magnificent creature glide through the tranquil night, feel the heaviness in your own limbs begin to match the stillness of the forest. You're safe here, wrapped in the quiet calm of the nocturnal world. As we journey through the secrets of these master navigators of the dark, you do not need to try to remember. Your subconscious mind is a vast, endless library, infinitely capable. It will effortlessly absorb these truths, these quiet wonders, while you rest. Just let go. Allow the imagery to wash over you, untethering your thoughts, letting them drift like feathers on a gentle, unseen thermal. Surrender to the heavy, comforting pull of sleep, knowing your mind will safely gather every detail in the soft background of your dreams. Let the tension melt from your jaw, your shoulders, your chest. Breathe in the cool, crisp essence of the pine forest, and breathe out the echoes of your waking day. We are stepping out of time, away from the rush of the sunlit hours, and crossing the threshold into the realm of the owl. Here, in the deep blue shadows, the rules of the day no longer apply. Here, magic is simply biology, refined over millions of years into a tapestry of nocturnal perfection. As the phantom shape nears the forest floor, its wings sweep through the frigid air without so much as a whisper. This miraculous silence, this complete absence of sound, is a marvel of evolutionary design woven directly into the bird's plumage. If you were to trace your fingers along the leading edge of an owl's primary flight feathers, you would not feel the stiff, clean edge common to other birds. Instead, you would find a delicate comb-like fringe, a row of microscopic serrated hooks. As the wing pushes forcefully down, this jagged edge breaks the rushing air into hundreds of tiny turbulent microcurrents, effectively slicing the sound of the wind into fragmented silence. But the mastery of quiet does not end there. Across the broad surface of every feather lies a velvety, downy coating, as soft as the finest spun silk. This layer acts as a supreme acoustic dampener, absorbing the faint rustling of feathers sliding against one another. The trailing edges of the wings are equally pliable, featuring a soft, tattered fringe that disperses the air smoothly as it slips away. The result is a creature that moves through the atmosphere like a ghost, a predator that arrives without a herald, a master of stealth wrapped in a cloak of absolute unbroken quiet. This profound silence is not merely for the element of surprise, it is an absolute necessity for a creature that perceives the world largely through the canvas of sound. Imagine floating in total darkness, relying entirely on the faint rustle of life hidden far beneath your feet. To achieve this, the owl possesses an auditory system of breathtaking complexity, an asymmetrical design hidden beneath the soft plumage of its head. Unlike human ears, which rest neatly balanced on either side of our faces, many owl species have ear openings positioned at completely different heights on their skulls. One opening might sit high above the eye, while the other is tucked low near the beak. This staggering arrangement means that a single sound, a mouse shifting its weight on a dry leaf, a vole tunneling through deep, packed snow, reaches each ear at a fractionally different microsecond. By tilting its head, calculating these microscopic delays with a brain heavily wired for acoustic processing, the owl maps the forest floor in flawless three-dimensional reality. it does not just hear the sound, it pinpoints its origin with geometric precision, visualizing the unseen prey through a matrix of auditory shadows and echoes, striking with perfect accuracy, even when blindfolded by the deepest darkness. To capture these incredibly faint whispers of life, the owl's face is sculpted into a specialized instrument of reception, a biological satellite dish known as the facial disc. If you gaze into the eyes of a great grey or a barn owl, you will notice a distinct heart-shaped or circular boundary of stiff, densely packed feathers framing their features. This striking arrangement is far more than a beautiful mask. Beneath the surface, muscular rings allow the owl to subtly alter the shape of this disc, expanding and contracting it to tune into specific frequencies. These stiffened feathers catch the ambient sound waves drifting upward from the earth, funneling them backward, directing the acoustic energy squarely into those asymmetrical ear openings. It is a brilliant natural amplifier. Just as cupping your hand behind your ear clarifies a distant voice, the facial disc gathers the faintest scratching of tiny claws against tree bark from dozens of yards away. The entire face is a listening device, a sensitive radar array wrapped in a visage of profound, ancient wisdom, constantly scanning the quiet woods for the tiny rhythmic pulses of the nocturnal ecosystem. Because the owl is so exquisitely tuned to its environment, the alignment of its senses must be perfectly directed. As the bird perches upon a frosted branch, you might witness an uncanny, almost supernatural movement, its head turning smoothly, slowly, seemingly unconstrained by the physical limits of bone and muscle. It glides around, looking backward, and then continues further still, achieving an astonishing rotation of 270 degrees. This incredible flexibility is born of necessity, an adaptation supported by 14 delicate neck vertebrae, twice the number found in a human spine. But such an extreme rotation poses a deadly biological challenge. Twisting the neck so severely should cut off the blood supply to the brain, causing a blackout. Yet, the owl's anatomy holds a brilliant failsafe. The cavities in their neck bones that carry the vital arteries are significantly larger than the vessels themselves, offering ample room for the bloodlines to flex and bend without pinching. Furthermore, a remarkable network of blood vessels near the base of the skull acts as a reservoir, a pooling system that stores highly oxygenated blood. As the head turns to its absolute limit, this reservoir ensures the brain is continually nourished, allowing the owl to maintain total vigilance over its domain without ever shifting its body, preserving the absolute stillness required for its hunt. This extreme fluid rotation of the neck is nature's elegant solution to a very rigid problem hidden within the owl's skull. If you look deeply into the mesmerizing golden or obsidian depths of an owl's gaze, you're not looking into spherical eyeballs. In truth, owls do not have eyeballs at all. Their optical organs are elongated, highly specialized tubes, shaped much like a pair of binoculars built directly into their skull. These tubes are rigidly locked into place by dense, bony structures called sclerotic rings. Because the eyes are firmly fixed, they cannot roll or dart from side to side. An owl can only look straight ahead. To shift its gaze, the entire head must pan and tilt. Yet, this tubular design provides an extraordinary advantage. It allows for an incredibly large cornea and an elongated retina packed densely with light-sensitive rod cells, maximizing the capture of ambient light. This binocular structure grants them spectacular depth perception, a crucial tool for judging distances while diving through a dense canopy of trees in the dead of night. They see the shadowy world in high contrast brilliance, turning the faintest slivers of starlight into a brightly illuminated landscape of opportunity. When the moment of the strike arrives, the owl transitions from a passive observer to an active, formidable force of nature, propelled downward by those silent wings. As the bird closes the distance, it swings its heavy feathered legs forward, revealing a specialized grip designed for inescapable precision. Unlike many songbirds that possess 3 toes pointing forward and 1 pointing back, the owl is equipped with zygodactyl feet. In their resting state, they feature 2 stout toes facing the front and 2 reaching toward the back. However, the true marvel lies in the outer toe, which is incredibly double-jointed. When the owl swoops to capture its prey, or reaches out to grasp a thick, sturdy branch, this versatile outer toe can pivot entirely, rotating forward or backward as needed to create an incredibly wide interlocking cage of razor-sharp talons. Driven by heavily muscled legs, the grip strength of some larger species is staggering, easily rivaling the crushing force of a large dog's bite. The undersides of these powerful toes are lined with rough textured pads, ensuring that once those talons close, nothing slips away. It is a grip of absolute certainty, finalizing the silent hunt with swift, unyielding efficiency. With the hunt concluded and the first pale grey hints of dawn threatening to break the horizon, the owl must retreat, trading its dominance of the night for the vulnerability of the day. To survive the sunlit hours safely hidden from mobbing crows and daytime predators, the owl employs a defense mechanism of breathtaking artistry, unparalleled optical camouflage. The intricate patterns woven into their plumage, the delicate mottling of slate greys, earthy browns, and ashen whites, are not merely decorative. They are an exact evolutionary mirror of the bird's chosen habitat. Consider the tiny eastern screech owl, nestling backward into a hollowed cavity of an ancient oak tree. As it closes its bright eyes and fluffs its feathers, its form dissolves completely into the surrounding wood. The vertical streaks on its chest perfectly mimic the fissures of rough bark, while the lighter speckles replicate the dusting of pale green lichens and moss. It becomes a ghost of the daytime forest, a knot of wood resting in plain sight, entirely invisible to the untrained eye. It is a profound stillness, a deep, meditative slumber woven directly into the living tapestry of the tree, patiently waiting for the cycle of the earth to turn back to darkness. While the owl rests motionless, wrapped in its bark-like disguise, a complex and efficient biological process is taking place deep within its body. Because they lack the teeth to chew their food, owls typically swallow their smaller meals entirely whole, fur, feathers, bones, and all. The stomach of the owl is divided into 2 distinct chambers to handle this heavy burden. The first chamber, the glandular proventriculus, washes the meal in potent digestive enzymes, breaking down the soft tissues and extracting the vital nutrients. The remaining material is then passed into the muscular gizzard, which acts as a powerful natural trash compactor. Here, the indigestible remnants, the tiny delicate skulls, the femurs, the soft downy fur and the rigid insect exoskeletons are tightly pressed and rolled into a dense odorless mass known as a pellet. Several hours after eating, the owl's body signals the completion of this sorting process. With a few subtle contortions of its neck, the owl gently regurgitates the dry pellet, letting it fall silently to the forest floor. These small, fibrous bundles are ecological time capsules, silently enriching the soil and leaving behind a fascinating hidden record of the night's quiet activities beneath the roost. Yet, if we cast our minds away from the dense, towering timberlands and journey toward the wide, windswept expanses of the open prairie, we discover that not all of these nocturnal phantoms rely on trees for their daytime sanctuary. In the vast, grassy plains, where the horizon stretches flat and unbroken under the massive sky, dwells the remarkable burrowing owl. True to its name, this long-legged terrestrial bird has completely abandoned the canopy, choosing instead to make its home deep beneath the surface of the earth. Often taking over the abandoned subterranean tunnel networks of prairie dogs or ground squirrels, they find safety in the cool, dark soil. But their connection to the earth is more profound than mere shelter. In a display of astonishing ingenuity, burrowing owls have been observed actively collecting the dung of grazing mammals, carefully placing it around the entrances of their underground burrows. This is not a messy habit, but a brilliant calculated tool. The scent of the dung acts as a potent lure, drawing a steady stream of large dung beetles directly to the owl's doorstep, effectively creating a self-sustaining subterranean delivery service, allowing the owl to feast on rich protein without ever leaving the comforting safety of its earthen porch. From the sun-baked plains of the prairie, our journey drifts endlessly northward, crossing invisible borders into the freezing, desolate beauty of the Arctic tundra, a land governed by extremes. Here, the rules of the night are completely rewritten, and so too are the habits of the majestic snowy owl. In the height of the Arctic summer, the Earth tilts toward the sun, bathing the frozen landscape in perpetual, unending daylight. The sun dips merely to the horizon before rising again, casting long, golden shadows across the permafrost, but never giving way to the dark. To survive in the land of the midnight sun, the snowy owl has adapted to become a diurnal hunter, wide awake and fully active in the blinding white light of day. They sit atop rocky outcrops, brilliant white phantoms against the snow, their piercing yellow eyes scanning the tundra for the subtle movements of lemmings. To withstand the agonizing, bone-chilling cold of their environment, they are the most heavily insulated of all owls. Their dense, bright white feathers are not just a cloak, but a thick, impenetrable armour against the sub-zero winds, extending all the way down their legs and completely covering their toes, like thick, fluffy winter boots, allowing them to stand comfortably for hours on sheets of solid, glittering ice. The glittering solid ice of the tundra slowly melts into a strange, hidden spectrum of light, an invisible luminescence that exists just beyond the boundaries of our waking world. If we were to wash the night in the deep, violet hues of ultraviolet light, the seemingly mundane feathers of many forest owls would suddenly erupt in a brilliant, breathtaking display of glowing magenta. Deep within the molecular structure of their newest, freshest flight feathers lies a naturally occurring compound called porphyrin. Under the kiss of UV rays, these fresh feathers fluoresce against the blackness of the night like electric, pinkish-red embers. As the feathers age and are weathered by the wind and the sun, this chemical slowly degrades, and the vibrant neon glow fades into a duller, dusky purple. It is a secret, glowing calendar written directly into their wings, a hidden language of colour that allows these birds to silently communicate their vitality and age in the pitch-black canopy, painting the dark woods with a vivid, bioluminescent magic that our human eyes can only dream of. The vivid magenta softly fades, dissolving beautifully into the warm, dusty terracotta of a desert twilight. We drift southward, carried by a dry, gentle thermal, until we find ourselves hovering above the vast, arid expanse of the Sonoran Desert. Here, the earth radiates the stored heat of the day, and towering ribbed monoliths of emerald green, the giant saguaro cacti stand like silent sentinels guarding the sands. Deep within the protective, hollowed-out flesh of these ancient desert giants sleeps the elf owl. It is an impossibly delicate creature, entirely fully grown yet no larger than a dry, fallen pine cone. With feathers the colour of pale sand and baked clay, it slumbers safely behind a fortress of sharp, unyielding spines. The hollowed cavity of the cactus acts as a perfect, naturally air-conditioned sanctuary, shielding the tiny, golden-eyed bird from the blistering afternoon sun. It is a miniature guardian of the dunes, proving that the majesty of the night does not require massive wingspans, but rather perfectly sculpted harmony with the environment. And as this knowledge settles, your breathing slows, your pulse finding the steady, ancient, unhurried rhythm of the sleeping desert. Every exhale releases the heat of the day, leaving you feeling cool, deeply grounded, and entirely at peace. From the dry, sun-baked desert sands, our vision drifts gracefully toward the cool, rushing sounds of deep equatorial waters. We find ourselves gliding over a winding river in sub-Saharan Africa, a ribbon of liquid obsidian winding through the dense, tangled roots of a mahogany forest, reflecting the fractured silver of a gibbous moon. Perched on a thick moss-draped branch overhanging the rushing current is Pell's fishing owl. Unlike its woodland cousins, this magnificent creature is cloaked in rich, vibrant shades of ginger and deep rufous brown. Because it hunts beneath the churning, noisy surface of the river, the evolutionary need for absolute silence has been washed away. It lacks the soft, velvety fringes on its flight feathers. The rushing water masks its approach far better than any silent plumage ever could. When it spots the shimmering silver flank of a fish breaking the surface, it drops like a stone. Its talons are completely bare of feathers, heavily scaled and lined with sharp, microscopic spikes, creating an inescapable, vice-like grip designed specifically to grasp slippery, thrashing prey. It rises back into the canopy, water dripping like liquid diamonds from its bright ginger feathers, a master of both the sky and the dark, flowing depths. The ripples of the dark water smooth out, becoming the rough, textured bark of an ancient, hollowed oak tree. It is here we realize a comforting truth about these masters of the night. They are brilliant architects of the mind, but they hold no desire to build. Owls do not construct their own nests. They are the great opportunists of the forest, effortlessly claiming the abandoned fortresses woven by hawks, crows, or ravens in the seasons past. They seek out deep, natural hollows in decaying wood, or the quiet, sheltered crevices of crumbling stone cliffs. There is a profound, relaxing wisdom in this behaviour. They expend no frantic energy gathering twigs, weaving grass, or fighting the elements to build a home from scratch. They simply arrive, surveying what the world has already provided, and they settle in. They find absolute comfort in surrender, occupying the empty, waiting spaces of the world, reminding us that sometimes we do not need to endlessly strive and build. We can simply rest safely in the structures that are already there to hold us. As they rest in these borrowed sanctuaries, a pale, translucent veil sweeps slowly across their vision. If you were to watch a resting owl closely as the morning light begins to filter through the leaves, you would see a mesmerizing milky blue film slide diagonally over their large luminous eyes. This is the nictitating membrane, a specialized third eyelid that operates entirely independently of the outer feathered lids. It functions as a soft, living windshield wiper, sweeping away the microscopic dust of the forest, moisturizing the vast surface of the cornea and shielding the sensitive retina from the sudden glare of the sun. But the true magic is its translucence. The owl can close this inner lid and still perceive the shifting shapes and shadows of the world around it. It is a biological curtain that allows them to retreat inward, dulling the sharp edges of reality into soft, manageable silhouettes, finding a quiet, protected state of semi-slumber while remaining ever watchful. That soft, filtered light deepens, expanding beautifully into the fiery, piercing orange gaze of a true titan of the twilight. We find ourselves rising high into the jagged, snow-capped peaks of the mountains, where the air is incredibly thin and the silence is heavy and absolute. Here rules the Eurasian eagle owl, a creature of staggering, awe-inspiring proportions. With a wingspan that can cast vast, sweeping shadows over the rocky crags, it sits with the posture of royalty. Above its fiery, pumpkin-orange eyes sit long, prominent tufts of feathers, rising like the grand, dark crown of a shadow king. It is the apex predator of the twilight, a creature that knows absolutely no fear in its domain. To watch it sit impassively against the howling alpine wind is to understand the very essence of security. It is untouchable, anchored to the ancient stone, radiating an aura of total, unshakable power. As you visualize this magnificent guardian of the peaks, you feel a profound sense of safety washing over you, the lingering tension leaving your muscles melting away, replaced by a heavy, protected calm. You're guarded by the shadows, perfectly safe in this boundless drifting journey. The deep silence of this mountain peak is broken not by a traditional call, but by a subtle, percussive rhythm echoing against the granite. We so often imagine the voice of the night as a solitary melodic hoot, But the language of these raptors is a vast, complex symphony of unexpected sounds. As a mother owl communicates with her downy white chicks hidden in the rocks, the air fills with soft, rapid chittering, a gentle, comforting vibration. When warning away an intruder, they do not always vocalize from their throats. Instead, they rapidly snap their curved, hooked beaks together, creating a sharp, echoing clatter that sounds exactly like a pair of dry, wooden castanets striking in the pitch-black darkness. Others release long, terrifying hisses that mimic the sound of high-pressure steam escaping a vent, while the barn owl completely forgoes the hoot, electing instead to release an ethereal, breathy, drawn-out screech that floats through abandoned buildings like a spectral wind. It is a rich, textured vocabulary of clicks, clacks, hisses and whispers, weaving an auditory tapestry that fills the quietest hours of the night with secret conversations. The echo of that breathy screech in a stone belfry leads us effortlessly to the shape that catches it, a shape of pure mathematical perfection glowing in the dark. If you trace the outline of the barn owl's face, you are tracing a biological masterpiece, a face sculpted entirely from snow-white, tightly packed feathers, forming a flawless, beautiful heart. But this romantic shape is an illusion masking a tool of intense acoustic geometry. The heart shape acts exactly like a parabolic reflector, the same mathematical curve used in satellite dishes and deep space radio telescopes. The stiff feathers on the outer rim trap the microscopic sound waves of a mouse chewing on a grain of wheat in the dark, and funnel those waves directly toward the offset ear openings. It is a face built by physics, designed to capture the faintest whispers of the universe, turning a beautiful visage into a highly calibrated radar dish made entirely of the softest, palest down. Gathering these quiet sounds is much like gathering the harvest, a calm, patient collection for the cold, unyielding months ahead. As the warm autumn gives way to the bitter, freezing grip of winter, some of the smaller northern owls practice an art of quiet preparation. When the hunting is exceptionally good and the deep snow begins to blanket the forest floor, they do not consume all of their prey at once. Instead, they create hidden pantries in the frost. They will meticulously cache their extra food, tucking it away in the hollows of freezing tree trunks or burying it deep beneath soft insulating mounds of snow, allowing the frigid earth to naturally preserve their harvest. Weeks later, when the storms howl and the hunting becomes impossible, the owl will return to its frozen cache. To thaw the frozen meal, the bird will simply sit atop it, much like incubating an egg, using the intense radiant heat of its own down-wrapped body to gently warm the food until it is ready. It is a perfect cycle of patience, preparation, and profound trust in the rhythm of the seasons. And just as the freezing earth gently and safely holds these hidden treasures, your resting mind gently holds these drifting, peaceful thoughts, sinking ever deeper, resting heavier into the soft darkness, knowing that everything you need is already perfectly preserved within you. The cold, ancient snow of the northern forest slowly gives way to the smooth, sun-warmed marble of antiquity. Our journey drifts backward through the corridors of time, arriving at the sunlit, olive-draped hills of ancient Greece. Here, perched serenely upon the shoulder of Athena, the revered goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, sits the little owl. With its bright, unblinking yellow eyes and its calm, observant demeanour, it was deeply worshipped as the divine embodiment of foresight and clarity. The ancients believed that a magical inner light illuminated the owl's eyes, allowing it to see perfectly through the literal and metaphorical darkness of ignorance. The likeness of this small speckled bird was struck into the silver of the Athenian tetradrachm coin, passing through the hands of philosophers, merchants, and kings. It became the eternal guardian of the Acropolis, a timeless century made of myth, marble, and starlight. To this day, the scientific name of the little owl remains Athene noctua, forever binding this quiet bird of the night to the ancient goddess of wisdom, reminding us that there is a profound, illuminating intelligence waiting to be discovered when we simply close our eyes and learn to embrace the dark. The heavy, solid marble of the ancient world softens, its rigid, eternal edges slowly dissolving into a cloud of the most delicate, weightless down. When we look upon the majestic silhouette of a great grey owl perched against the luminous backdrop of a winter moon, we are mesmerised by an elegant biological illusion. What appears to our eyes as a massive, imposing creature of the deep woods is, in absolute reality, a masterclass in weightlessness. Beneath that vast, voluminous coat of beautifully patterned plumage, the actual physical body of the bird is astonishingly small, often making up only a tiny fraction of its apparent visual size. Their feathers are so incredibly thick, so deeply layered and heavily fluffed, that they function as a magnificent wearable cloud. This incredible volume of plumage traps a thick protective layer of still air directly against their warm skin, creating a thermal barrier that easily defies the bitterest, most punishing frost of the northern winters. If you were to gently hold one of these woodland giants, you would feel almost no weight at all, just a handful of fragile hollowed bones wrapped in an endless sea of soft, insulating air, a creature seemingly unbound by the heavy laws of gravity. The shifting, silvery light of our journey catches the gleam of a watchful eye hidden within that endless fluff, revealing a hidden, chromatic language woven directly into the very iris of the bird. The breathtaking colour of an owl's eye is rarely an accident of nature. Rather, it is a vivid, beautifully painted calendar that reveals the exact hour of their absolute dominion over the forest. If you find yourself gazing into eyes as black as polished obsidian, eyes that seem to hold the void of space, you are looking at a creature of the deepest, darkest night. Species like the barred owl possess these dark eyes, perfectly adapted to hunt when the forest is entirely swallowed by the heavier shadows. But as the ink-black night begins to bleed into the softer hues of twilight, the colours of the iris dramatically shift. Owls adorned with eyes of brilliant burning orange, like the massive, imperious Eurasian eagle owl, are the undisputed lords of the crepuscular hours, perfectly designed to hunt in the soft, bruised light of the evening dusk and the early dawn. And those with eyes of pale, striking, luminous yellow, they are the rare exceptions, the daywalkers, navigating the bright sunlit hours with absolute unwavering clarity. It is a brilliant spectrum of light physically trapped in the iris, a beautiful biological clock glowing softly in the dark. The fiery, burning orange reflection in those crepuscular eyes shimmers, blurring slowly as a gentle rhythmic rain begins to fall across the dense canopy. As the cool water droplets patter softly against the broad green leaves, we uncover a fascinating hidden vulnerability within their silent perfection. To achieve their ghostly, soundless flight, these predators have made a profound evolutionary sacrifice. Unlike waterfowl or songbirds, which constantly coat their feathers in thick, water-resistant oils secreted from a specialized gland, the owl remains largely unoiled. Those soft, velvety fringes that miraculously slice the wind into silence act much like a highly absorbent sponge when exposed to heavy moisture. When the skies finally open and the torrential downpour begins, the masters of the night simply cannot fly. Their majestic wings become heavily waterlogged, burdened and uncharacteristically loud, and so they must patiently retreat, tucking themselves deep into the dry, sheltered, cavernous hollows of the oldest trees, gracefully waiting out the storm, wrapped warmly in the rich, earthy scent of wet bark, damp moss, and the ozone of the falling rain. And as the soft, repetitive sound of that gentle, distant rain washes over you, your own breathing slows even further, effortlessly matching the patient, rhythmic dripping of the ancient forest. The heavy, comforting weight of the rain mirrors the deep, heavy, comforting weight settling into your limbs. You're completely sheltered. You're perfectly safe from the storm, resting still and unbothered in the warm, dry dark, letting the rhythm of the water carry you deeper, Deep within those dry sheltered hollows, hidden far from the reach of the driving rain, a strange, beautiful and endearing slumber is taking place. When owl chicks, affectionately known as owlets, are newly hatched into the world, they are covered entirely in a dense, brilliant white down, looking very much like animated, snowy clouds resting in the wood. But their rapid, miraculous growth comes with a peculiar, temporary burden. Their complex brains and their massive, highly sophisticated eyes develop so incredibly quickly that their tiny, fragile necks simply cannot support the immense weight of their own heads. And so, when an owlet finally surrenders to the absolute necessity of sleep, it cannot tuck its head neatly backwards over its shoulder like a fully grown adult bird. Instead, it simply collapses forward, dropping its heavy head flat onto the soft floor of the nest, sleeping entirely face down in the dark. They look like little, feathered puddles melting peacefully into the ancient wood, completely and entirely given over to the overwhelming, irresistible pull of deep, restorative, uninterrupted sleep. When they finally awaken from this deep, heavy rest, there is delicate, meticulous and necessary work to be done. The preservation of their absolute silence requires highly specialized tools, and nature has provided a brilliant hidden instrument right at the tips of their toes. If you were to closely examine the elongated middle toe of a resting barn owl, you would discover an elegant built-in grooming device. The inner edge of this specific, sharply curved talon is uniquely serrated, featuring a row of tiny, precisely spaced tooth-like ridges. This marvel of anatomy is known as the pectinate claw. As the owl grooms itself in the quiet, undisturbed hours of the day, it uses this biological comb to meticulously drag through the dense, stiff feathers of its facial disc, carefully smoothing away microscopic dust and perfectly aligning every single barb to ensure its acoustic radar remains flawlessly tuned. It is a remarkably slow, methodical and meditative ritual, a rhythmic, soothing combing of the velvet that patiently prepares them for the absolute silence of the hunt ahead. The repetitive, soothing motion of this quiet grooming lulls our attention further along, shifting our awareness downward to the crisp, damp, heavily scented air of the forest floor. The ground beneath the canopy is a chaotic symphony of intense aromas, the rich smell of decaying autumn leaves, the sweet perfume of blooming night flowers, and the sharp, warning musk of grounded prey hiding in the brush. Yet, the majestic owl moves through this densely aromatic world entirely unaffected. The olfactory lobes hidden within their sophisticated brains are remarkably, exceptionally small, rendering their sense of smell almost completely non-existent. This biological absence, however, is not a weakness, but a magnificent strategic advantage. It allows the formidable great horned owl to confidently become the apex predator of one of the forest's most heavily avoided creatures, the striped skunk. Completely unfazed by the blinding, noxious chemical spray that successfully repels every other hunter in the woods, the owl strikes swiftly from above with absolute impunity. They are the silent, unaffected sanitizers of the night, entirely immune to the invisible, aromatic defenses of the shadowy forest floor. The absence of this single sense is more than compensated by the absolute unbroken dominance of their visual world. But to maintain this flawless panoramic sightline, even the physical architecture of their own face must completely bow to the supremacy of the eyes. The beak of an owl is powerfully hooked, incredibly sharp, and designed to effortlessly tear through sustenance, yet its placement is beautifully, intentionally subdued. Unlike most other birds whose beaks jut prominently forward, dominating their profile and their line of sight, the owl's beak points sharply, aggressively downward, resting nearly flat against the soft feathers of the facial disc. This severe downward curvature is no accident of design. It absolutely ensures that the beak never, ever obstructs the bird's crucial, life-saving binocular field of vision. Furthermore, by tucking the beak away at this steep angle, It prevents the pale, highly polished surface of the keratin from catching the ambient moonlight and reflecting a distracting, blinding glare directly back into the owl's own incredibly sensitive eyes. Every single millimetre of their physical form is an awe-inspiring exercise in optical perfection. This perfect, entirely unobstructed view smoothly clears your own mind, gently sweeping away the lingering clutter, the bright lights, and the noise of the waking world. As the quiet path ahead opens up, vast, clear, and perfectly still, your thoughts drift easily, untethered and wonderfully light, floating effortlessly into the deepening gentle current of sleep. This perfectly unobstructed view allows them to stare out across vast, endless, sweeping distances that eventually leave the comforting, solid familiarity of the trees far, far behind. While we so often envision all owls as permanently anchored to the dark, silent woods, the remarkable short-eared owl fully embraces the boundless wandering spirit of a global nomad. These pale, beautifully streaked travellers are capable of staggering, unbelievable pelagic journeys, flying straight out across the dark, churning, seemingly endless expanse of the open ocean. Driven by the subtle shifting of the changing seasons and the invisible, magnetic pull of the Earth itself, they confidently navigate the heavy marine layer without a single physical landmark, completely trusting the void of the night sky. Sailors on lonely deep-sea vessels often report these silent spectral birds dropping quietly out of the misty sky to rest upon their cold, metal rigging, hundreds of miles from the nearest shoreline. They are fearless, tireless navigators of the oceanic night, proving that the deep urge to explore, to cross the unknown dark, is woven into the very fabric of their wide, sweeping wings. The endless, rhythmic, hypnotic surging of those deep ocean waves eventually breaks upon a distant, deeply forested shore, where the solitary, endless journey of the oceanic nomad melts softly into the gentle, delicate union of two. The world of the owl is undeniably a world of fierce predatory efficiency, yet their quiet rituals of courtship are filled with a startling, breathtakingly tender grace. In the early, frosty days of spring, under the pale silver glow of a crescent moon, a male owl will cautiously approach his chosen mate not with a loud display of dominance, but with a quiet, humble offering. Having caught a small, vital morsel of food, he will carry it carefully, deliberately, to her high branch. He does not drop it at her feet. Instead, he steps incredibly close, slowly closing his large, luminous eyes, and leans forward, gently and carefully passing the gift directly from his sharply curved beak into hers. It is a miraculously slow, highly intimate exchange, a quiet, unspoken promise of absolute provision and deep partnership, revealing a soft, profoundly romantic centre, carefully hidden beneath the stoic armour of the silent hunter. This timeless, incredibly gentle ritual of connection pulls our drifting minds deeper and deeper into the quiet, forgotten past, drifting far beyond the ancient marble of Greece, sinking down into the humid, primeval mists of a deeply prehistoric Earth. Let your heavy mind drift back over 10,000 years, arriving in the dense, towering, completely untouched jungles of Pleistocene Cuba. Here, moving powerfully through the thick, ancient leaf litter, stalks a breathtaking creature of truly mythic proportions, Ornomegalonyx, the giant running owl. Towering nearly 3 feet tall into the damp air and weighing more than a large muscular dog, this magnificent, terrifying giant had largely forsaken the open sky. Its legs were massively elongated, incredibly thick and powerfully muscled, brilliantly designed for sprinting rapidly across the dark, tangled forest floor rather than soaring elegantly above it. It was the undisputed apex predator of its ancient insular realm, a massive earthbound titan wrapped entirely in feathers, ruling the deep shadows of a lost, forgotten world. Although the giant running owl has long since faded into the deep, fossilized memory of the Earth, its ancient, formidable, unstoppable spirit still echoes quietly in the blood of every silent hunter that rests peacefully in the trees tonight. The ancient, formidable spirit of the earthbound giant slowly exhales, its massive form dissolving back into the shadowy, fossilized memory of the forest, leaving behind only the modern, silent hunter, resting peacefully in the high canopy. As the silver light of the moon shifts across the branches, the silhouette of this resting guardian often reveals a distinctive, iconic shape, two sharply pointed crests rising elegantly from the crown of its head. For centuries, humanity has called them eared owls, projecting our own mammalian reflections onto the avian form. But these striking, elevated tufts, the plumicorns, hold absolutely no auditory function whatsoever. They're completely deaf to the world, consisting only of highly specialized, deeply expressive feathers. In the shifting, dappled light of the ancient woods, these soft tufts act as a masterful biological illusion. They serve to completely break up the perfectly round, unmistakable and vulnerable silhouette of a resting bird's head, perfectly mimicking the jagged, uneven splintering of a broken tree branch. When the owl is calm and untroubled, the plumicorns rest softly against the skull, but as their focus sharpens, microscopic muscular contractions pull these feathers rigidly upward, signalling their intense alertness to the dark woods around them. A quiet, visual language spoken entirely in the subtle raising and lowering of shadows. The texture of this visual deception leads us to a moment of even more profound, defensive transformation. When the protective, heavy velvet of the night is finally stripped away by the rising sun, and the harsh, unforgiving daylight exposes the sleeping owl to the cacophony of mobbing crows and aggressive territorial songbirds, the owl does not frantically flee. Instead, it performs a breathtaking act of physical metamorphosis known as the concealing posture. As a daytime threat approaches, an owl like the slender long-eared or the African white-faced will instantly, silently pull its feathers incredibly tight against its body, shrinking its visual mass by dramatic, astonishing proportions. It stretches its neck upward, elongating its entire form until it is impossibly thin and rigid. It squints its large, luminous, reflective eyes down to mere microscopic slits, hiding their golden glare from the sun, and freezes with absolute statue-like rigidity. It literally becomes the wood it sits upon. To watch this transformation is to witness a creature actively erasing itself from the waking world, finding absolute safety by melting directly into the background of reality. Within this rigid wooden stillness, there is a profound, deeply comforting conservation of energy. As the evening temperature plummets and the creeping crystalline frost begins to trace delicate patterns along the branches, the resting owl must carefully protect the delicate, unfeathered portions of its body from the biting cold. Slowly, and with seamless grace, it will draw one heavily taloned foot upward, disappearing it completely deep into the thick furnace-like warmth of its downy underbelly. It balances its entire significant weight upon a single solitary leg. But this is not a precarious, tiring balancing act that requires constant waking effort. Hidden deep within the anatomy of that extended leg is an automatic, beautifully designed locking mechanism. As the owl's heavy body weight settles downward into rest, a specialized, thick tendon mechanically locks the sharp toes firmly around the frozen branch. It requires absolutely zero muscular effort to maintain this iron grip. The owl is essentially physically clamped to the tree, allowing its conscious mind to completely let go, drifting away into heavy slumber, anchored perfectly to the earth while wrapped safely in its own internal warmth. And as this knowledge settles, your own breathing naturally slows, finding that exact same, effortless, locked-in security. You can feel the heavy, comforting weight of your own body pressing down, entirely and completely supported by the soft surface beneath you. There is absolutely no effort required to stay here. You are anchored, you are warm, and you are deeply, profoundly at rest. The radiant warmth of that hidden, resting posture invites us to look closer at the quiet, unseen domestic life taking place deep within the hollows. Deep inside the dark, protective cavity of an ancient sycamore tree, the small, mottled eastern screech owl engages in one of the most remarkable, completely hidden partnerships in the natural world. When the adult owl returns from a successful midnight hunt, it does not always bring back a meal that is meant to be immediately consumed. Occasionally, carefully and delicately cradled within its sharply curved beak, it brings back a tiny, writhing, entirely live Texas blind snake. Instead of devouring this small, harmless reptile, the owl gently, deliberately releases it onto the soft, debris-covered floor of the nest. The little snake quickly burrows into the accumulated wood dust, the soft pellets, and the discarded downy feathers. It becomes a permanent living housekeeper. It sustains itself entirely by hunting and consuming the microscopic parasitic larvae and biting insects that would otherwise afflict the fragile, softly sleeping owlets. In return for this vital service, the blind snake lives fully protected from the harsh elements and predators, perfectly safe within the impenetrable fortress of the apex hunter. It is a brilliant hidden harmony, a gentle, unexpected coexistence thriving silently in the dark core of the ancient tree. This self-sustaining, perfectly balanced world hidden within the wood reflects another profound biological independence: the owl's remarkable, almost mythical relationship with water. As we listen to the soft, rhythmic babbling of a distant silver brook winding through the ferns, it is fascinating to realize that many majestic owl species will live their entire, vast lives without ever bending their heads to take a single, solitary drink of liquid water. They are perfectly, efficiently designed to extract every microscopic drop of life-giving moisture they require directly from the sustenance they consume. Their internal organs are masterpieces of conservation, filtering and absorbing deep hydration from the rich, nutrient-dense tissues of the night's harvest. In the blistering, arid expanses of the Red Rock Desert, or the frozen, locked ice landscapes of the deepest winter, this biological independence is their ultimate liberating salvation. They carry their own internal oasis, completely untethered from the heavy need for streams or rain, moving freely and boundlessly through the driest, most unforgiving landscapes with absolute, sustained, and unbroken vitality. The liquid brilliance of their survival is mirrored perfectly deep within the architecture of their massive glowing eyes, because their elongated retinas are so incredibly, densely packed with millions of light-gathering rod cells. Those eyes require a massive, continuous and rushing supply of oxygen and rich nutrients to function in the pitch black. Yet, the presence of heavy, branching blood vessels sprawling across the surface of the retina would block the faint incoming starlight, completely destroying their flawless nocturnal vision. To solve this impossible puzzle, evolution has gifted them a deeply strange, beautiful, and highly specialized structure hidden directly inside the clear fluid of the eye known as the pector noculi. It is a tiny, heavily vascularized comb-like organ that juts out from the optic nerve, ingeniously casting almost no shadow upon the sensitive retina itself. As the owl's eye shifts, the microscopic rhythmic pulsations of this tiny pleated comb circulate oxygen and nutrients perfectly through the transparent vitreous fluid, nourishing the massive eye entirely from within. It is a microscopic beating heart of vision, a hidden engine of clarity operating flawlessly in the beautiful dark. And as the quiet, steady rhythm of that hidden perfection continues, your own mind gently clears. The heavy shadows of your waking thoughts slowly recede, leaving only a vast, soft, comforting expanse. With every slow, measured breath in, you draw in peaceful clarity, and with every long, sighing breath out, you release the need to understand, just floating easily, weightlessly, on the gentle current of these drifting words. The deep, rich shadows of the forest are woven not just into their vision, but directly into the very physical strength of their sweeping wings. When we pause to admire the stunning, intricate patterns of a barred owl, the heavy, dark, chocolate-brown stripes alternating with the soft, pale cream, we are looking at far more than just a masterpiece of optical camouflage. The dark pigments that paint these beautiful, alternating feathers are formed by melanin, the exact same natural compound that colours human skin and hair. But in the microscopic world of feathers, melanin serves an incredibly vital, heavily structural purpose. The tiny interlocking keratin fibres infused with this dark pigment are physically thicker, exponentially denser, and significantly more resistant to the harsh wear and tear of the wind. The dark, heavily pigmented bands across their primary flight feathers are literally the load-bearing beams of their wings, providing rigid, unyielding strength precisely where the feathers strike the cold air the hardest. Their beautiful, shadowy coloration is literal structural armour, proving that their profound visual beauty is fundamentally intertwined with their unbreakable, enduring strength. The gentle, yielding air that endlessly tests those strong wings also influences their quietest, most remarkably subtle movements. If you were to walk silently through a dense, fragrant pine thicket and accidentally lock eyes with a tiny heart-shaped northern saw-whet owl perched just inches from your face, it would likely not flee in panic. It possesses a calm, deeply stoic and patient demeanour that is incredibly rare in the wild world. But if a sudden wind begins to blow, gently shaking the pine needles and swaying the branches, the little owl will perform a mesmerising rhythmic and hypnotic dance. It will slowly, continuously sway its small body in a smooth circular motion, carefully keeping its head perfectly level and its eyes locked forward. It is exactly, precisely matching the frequency, the rhythm, and the pendulum swing of the moving branch it rests upon. To the eye of a passing predator, the owl instantly ceases to be an independent living creature and simply becomes an attached, lifeless extension of the swaying, wind-blown tree. It is a masterclass in blending, yielding entirely to the physical motion of the world around it, finding perfect safety in absolute fluid synchronization. Yielding so perfectly to the physical world requires a mind capable of calculating its infinite, ever-shifting geometry. Hidden safely beneath the soft, rounded, feathered skull of the owl lies a brain that is radically, beautifully different from our own. Because their reliance on the sense of smell is so minimal, the olfactory lobes are nearly completely absent, making generous room for a massive, highly developed region dominating the top of their forebrain known as the wulst. This dense, heavy concentration of millions of specialized neurons is entirely singularly dedicated to processing the overwhelming flood of complex three-dimensional sensory data. It is the biological supercomputer that effortlessly takes the microscopic, asymmetrical time delays of sound hitting their ears, and the binocular overlap from their fixed, tubular eyes, and instantly merges them into a single, flawless, holographic map of the dense forest. The wulst calculates distance, trajectory, velocity, and depth with instantaneous mathematical perfection. As they sit seemingly idle, entirely motionless in the dark, their minds are peacefully running millions of flawless geometric equations, safely navigating a complex invisible architecture that we can barely begin to fathom. The slow, deliberate, flawless calculation of time inevitably brings us to the gentle, graceful fading of the years. In the wild, the life of a predator is often brief, dictated by the harsh rules of the seasons. But when completely removed from the unforgiving edge of starvation and provided with quiet, steady sanctuary, the owl reveals a staggering, beautiful capacity for incredible longevity. In the calm, protected, sun-dappled environments of aviaries and sanctuaries, some of these majestic birds have lived for over half a century. As the long decades slowly turn, they age with an incredible, dignified and quiet grace. The vibrant, burning orange of the eagle owl's striking eyes may slowly, beautifully soften into a hazy, muted sunset amber. The sharp, pristine edges of their feathers may thin, and their lightning-fast strikes may mellow into slow, deliberate, incredibly unhurried movements. Yet, they never ever lose their regal, imposing posture. They sit comfortably upon their perches like ancient feathered monks, radiating a deep, slow-burning, peaceful wisdom. They become living, breathing testaments to the quiet endurance of time, their long, incredibly peaceful lives reminding us that there is a profound, beautiful comfort in simply resting, breathing softly, and letting the years drift silently, harmlessly by. This gentle passage of time is not marked by sudden, jarring shifts, but by a quiet, continuous process of physical renewal that unfolds beautifully in the dark. If we look closely at the sweeping, majestic wings of a resting barred owl as the seasons slowly turn, we witness the magic of the sequential molt. Unlike many water birds that shed all their primary flight feathers at once, rendering them temporarily grounded and vulnerable, the owl replaces its vital plumage with agonizingly slow, perfect symmetry. A single, weathered feather on the left wing is mirrored by the exact same feather dropping from the right wing. Over the course of many long, languid months, the old frayed edges are gently pushed out by the pristine, velvety growth of the new. It is a biological masterpiece of patience, ensuring that their absolute mastery of the air, their silent, ghostly balance, is never once compromised. They are constantly, quietly remaking themselves, shedding the heavy memories of the past year and weaving a fresh, flawless cloak of shadows. The gentle descent of a single discarded feather tumbling softly toward the forest floor leaves behind a microscopic, shimmering trail in the moonlight, a delicate dusting of the softest substance known to the woods. Hidden beneath the beautifully patterned contour feathers lies a specialized layer known as powder down. Unlike normal feathers that grow to a certain length and stop, these unique downy structures are in a state of continuous, eternal growth. As they lengthen, their delicate tips purposefully disintegrate, crumbling away into an impossibly fine, silky, talc-like dust. As the owl gently preens in the quiet hours of the twilight, this microscopic powder is meticulously spread across the entire body. It absorbs excess moisture, conditions the rigid keratin, and adds an ultimate microscopic layer of friction-reducing softness. It is as if the owl is continuously bathing in a dry, luminous dust, wrapping its form in a diaphanous silvery haze that further deadens the sound of its passage. The ethereal, weightless quality of this silken dust perfectly mirrors the breathtaking physics of their flight. When a massive snowy owl pushes off from a frozen tundra ridge, the sheer, staggering size of its wingspan catches the heavy, freezing air with absolute grace. This phenomenon is known as low wing loading, a mathematical harmony where the bird's incredibly light body mass is perfectly supported by a vast, expansive canvas of feathers. Because the surface area of their broad, rounded wings is so remarkably large compared to their physical weight, they possess an almost supernatural buoyancy. They do not need to frantically, exhaustingly beat their wings to stay aloft. Instead, they catch the faintest, most delicate updrafts, hovering suspended in the crisp night air like a paper kite on a gentle breeze, floating with an effortless, sustained tranquility that defies the heavy pull of the earth below. And as this knowledge settles, your own breathing slows, your chest rising and falling with that exact same effortless buoyancy. You can feel the heavy downward pull of the day completely vanishing, replaced by a vast, expansive lightness. You're hovering perfectly suspended in this quiet moment, entirely supported, entirely free of gravity. This profound, effortless floating is born not just from the breadth of their wings, but from the hidden, cavernous architecture deep within their very frame. If we could peer past the dense white feathers and the warm, pulsing muscles, we would discover a skeletal system that is a masterclass in weightless engineering. Many of the owl's largest bones are entirely pneumatic, meaning they are completely hollowed out, filled with nothing but the cool, dark air of the forest. But these bones are not fragile. Inside the empty cylindrical shafts lies a brilliant complex network of microscopic, crisscrossing mineral struts known as trabeculor. These delicate internal pillars reinforce the bone from the inside out, providing staggering, unbreakable structural integrity while completely eliminating the dense, heavy marrow found in mammalian bones. Their skeleton is essentially a cathedral of air and calcium, a magnificent hollowed architecture designed solely to conquer the sky. The expansive, hollowed spaces within their bones seamlessly connect to a respiratory system of unimaginable, continuous depth. As you take a slow, deep breath in, your lungs fill, and as you exhale, they empty. But the owl breathes in a continuous, unbroken circle of vitality. Their lungs are rigidly fixed against their ribs, connected to a complex, sprawling network of 9 incredibly thin, transparent air sacs that extend deep into their abdomen and even into the hollow cavities of their bones. When an owl inhales, the fresh, oxygen-rich air bypasses the lungs and fills the rear air sacs. When it exhales, that trapped oxygen is pushed forward, flooding the lungs. This means that whether the bird is breathing in or breathing out, a constant rushing river of pure, life-giving oxygen is continuously washing over their bloodstream. It is a perfect, never-ending loop of breath. A deep, sustained rhythm of life that fuels their phenomenal vision and powers their silent, sweeping flight through the thinnest, coldest air. This continuous, rushing flow of air travels upward through the chest, arriving at the hidden, vibrating core of the night's most haunting melodies. While humans speak by vibrating folds of tissue in the throat, the owl creates its resonant, echoing hoots from a place much deeper within. Nestled at the very base of their windpipe, just where it branches outward into the lungs, lies the syrinx. This specialized, bony, box-like organ contains delicate, highly elastic membranes. By intricately controlling the pressure of the air rushing upward from the air sacs and by flexing tiny, complex muscles, the owl vibrates these membranes with astonishing calibrated precision. Because the sound originates so deep within the cavernous, hollowed chest, it gains an incredibly rich, booming resonance. A low throbbing frequency that easily penetrates the dense, tangled trunks of the deep forest, travelling for miles through the crisp, still air without losing a fraction of its profound, mournful beauty. The deep, resonating hum of that distant call washes over you, drawing you further down, wrapping your thoughts in a blanket of low, soothing frequencies. Every vibration in the air relaxes another muscle. Every slow, echoing hoot is a quiet permission to sink deeper, deeper, deeper into the dark, comforting earth. The warm, vibrating chest that produces this beautiful sound harbours another deeply tender secret, revealed only in the quietest, most vulnerable days of the early spring. When a female owl settles into the secluded dark of her hollowed tree to incubate her clutch of smooth white eggs, the thick, insulating feathers of her underbelly become a barrier to the transfer of vital, life-giving heat. To solve this, she undergoes a fascinating hormonal transformation, purposefully shedding the downy feathers from her chest to expose a patch of completely bare, highly vascularized skin known as the brood patch. The blood vessels in this area swell, surging with the radiant, deep core heat of her pulsing heart. When she lowers her body over the nest, this bare, burning patch presses directly against the cold, fragile shells, wrapping the developing life in a blanket of pure maternal warmth. It is a stunning act of physical sacrifice, turning her own body into a perfect living furnace to ensure the safe, steady growth of the generation to come. Beneath this radiant protective heat, The new life awakens not in a single sudden burst, but in a slow, patient and highly orchestrated rhythm. Unlike songbirds that wait until all their eggs are laid before beginning to incubate, the mother owl begins warming the very first egg the moment it rests in the nest. Because she lays an egg every few days, the incubation process is beautifully staggered. This phenomenon, known as a synchronous hatching, creates a fascinating, stair-stepped family dynamic within the dark hollow. The first chick to emerge will be covered in thick down and exploring the edges of the nest, while the youngest is still fighting to break free from its shell. This staggered timeline is a brilliant evolutionary failsafe against the unpredictable scarcity of the wild. It ensures that in times of quiet abundance, the entire chaotic staircase of owlets can thrive, growing at their own steady individual pace under the watchful golden eyes of their silent guardians. While the youngest, most fragile chick sleeps securely in the dark wood, the watchful parents must fiercely guard the perimeter of their domain. But nature has gifted some of the smallest owls a brilliant optical illusion to protect them while their backs are turned. If you were to sneak quietly behind a tiny resting northern pygmy owl perched in a sunlit pine, you would suddenly feel as though you were being watched. Woven directly into the plumage on the absolute back of their rounded heads are two large, starkly contrasting patches of black and white feathers. These are the occipital spots, an evolutionary masterpiece of mimicry that perfectly resembles a pair of wide, glaring, unblinking eyes. To a hawk circling high above, or a weasel creeping up the bark, the resting owl never appears to be looking away. It is a perpetual false gaze, a vigilant feathery mask that deters the boldest predators, proving that sometimes absolute safety is simply a matter of brilliant static deception. The false painted gaze of the tiny woodland owl eventually fades, dissolving perfectly into the vast, blindingly bright and completely unbroken expanse of the distant frozen north. Here, the concept of a permanent home is entirely swept away by the brutal shifting realities of the ice. The majestic, heavy, snowy owl is not tethered to a single ancient tree or a familiar valley. They are driven by the mysterious pulsating rhythms of the earth itself, specifically the massive cyclical population blooms of the tiny tunnelling lemming. When the lemmings vanish beneath the permafrost, the great white owls do not stay and starve, they simply take to the wind. In a magnificent, unpredictable phenomenon known as an eruption, thousands of these ghostly silent hunters will flow southward like a slow, deliberate feathered glacier. They suddenly appear in quiet, snow-dusted farm fields, on lonely, windswept coastal dunes, and atop the silent, freezing rooftops of northern cities. They are the great nomadic wanderers of the ice, beautiful pale spectres drifting completely untethered across the globe, endlessly chasing the invisible, shifting pulse of abundance beneath the winter snow. The pale spectres drifting completely untethered across the globe eventually find their way back to the heavy, fragrant shelter of the evergreens. And while we so often imagine the owl as the solitary brooding sentinel of the deep night, the bitterest depths of winter reveal a secret, deeply comforting gathering hidden within the branches. When the snow grows too deep and the cold winds howl across the open meadows, the slender, deeply camouflaged long-eared owls completely abandon their fierce territorial independence. They travel silently through the freezing dusk to converge upon a single ancient pine tree, forming a remarkable silent community known as a communal roost. Up to 50 of these magnificent birds will sit shoulder to shoulder, their feathers softly touching, weaving a collective tapestry of shared warmth. In the heart of the freezing darkness, they become a single, breathing entity, a quiet brotherhood of shadows. It is a profound surrender of ego to survival, a beautiful reminder that when the world becomes too harsh, there is an absolute, undeniable safety in drawing close together and sharing the quiet warmth of simply being near one another. This quiet closeness, This deliberate gathering of warmth against the frost echoes the very beginning of their existence, deep within the hidden architecture of the wood. When a mother owl finally selects the dark, perfectly sheltered hollow where she will bring new life into the world, she deposits a clutch of eggs that look radically different from those of the wandering songbirds. Because the owl never builds an exposed cup-shaped nest, balancing precariously on a swaying branch, her eggs do not need the oval, tapered shape designed by evolution to spin in a tight circle rather than rolling off a dangerous ledge. Safely cradled deep within the bowl-shaped floor of a tree cavity or the flat recess of a stone cliff, the owl's eggs are brilliantly, mathematically simple. They're almost perfectly spherical. They rest in the darkness like a clutch of smooth, heavy, luminous white pearls, completely secure in their environment. Their flawless, rounded geometry is a physical manifestation of total security, requiring no defensive sharp edges or tapered points. Just the perfect, unending curve of safety. And as you visualize that perfect, unbroken curve, your own thoughts begin to smooth out, losing their sharp edges, losing their chaotic angles, settling into a flawless, continuous loop of deep, effortless relaxation. You're resting in your own sheltered hollow, perfectly safe, perfectly held by the soft gravity of the night. The flawless, smooth surface of the egg is soon replaced by a world of infinite, delicate, tactile textures. As we marvel at the unmatched telescopic vision of the hunting owl, capable of spotting a trembling leaf from across a moonlit valley, we discover a fascinating, paradoxical vulnerability. Because their massive, tubular eyes are so highly specialized for extreme distance and gathering faint light, they are incredibly far-sighted. This means that when an owl finally swoops down, and its prey is mere inches from its face, the bird is actually, effectively blind. The visual world blurs into an unrecognizable haze, but the owl does not miss. Woven directly into the soft skin around the base of their sharply curved beak is a cluster of specialized, highly sensitive, hair-like feathers known as filoplumes. Operating exactly like the sensitive whiskers of a feline, these delicate bristles map the immediate physical space in the total absence of sight. As the talons reach out, these facial bristles brush against the world, providing instantaneous microscopic tactile feedback to the brain, guiding the beak with flawless precision when the eyes can no longer see. It is a beautiful transition from the vastness of vision to the extreme, intimate closeness of touch. The physical touch of the night air soon yields to the invisible, masterful manipulation of sound itself. High in the canopy of the ancient towering ponderosa pines, the tiny, deeply camouflaged, flammulated owl performs a spectacular auditory illusion. Weighing no more than a handful of dry leaves, this diminutive hunter possesses a voice that is astonishingly deep and throaty, but its true magic lies in its mastery of volume. By subtly constricting its throat and changing the precise angle of its head, this tiny bird can intentionally muffle its own hoot, making the sound incredibly faint and diffuse. To a predator prowling the forest floor, or a human listener standing perfectly still in the dark, the deep, rhythmic call seems to be echoing from a vast, impossible distance away, drifting over the next ridge, or hiding deep in the neighbouring valley. It is biological ventriloquism. The little owl projects an illusion of immense space, cloaking its true, vulnerable location in a masterpiece of acoustic deception, proving that survival in the dark is often about mastering the art of the unseen and the unfound. The deliberate stretching of sound perfectly mirrors the deliberate, breathtaking stretching of time itself. As the silent hunter finally leaves its perch to cross the open, starlit meadow, we witness a suspension of physical laws that feels pulled directly from the landscape of a dream. Most heavy flying creatures are bound by a rigid mathematical rule known as stall speed. If they fly too slowly, the air can no longer support their mass, and they fall from the sky. But the owl, With its massive, deeply cupped wings and incredibly lightweight frame, can decelerate to a mesmerizing, almost impossible crawl. They can glide flawlessly through the night air at a staggering, creeping pace of just 2 miles per hour without ever losing altitude. They hover like slow-moving phantoms, drifting over the tall silver grasses with a lingering, eternal patience. To watch them fly at this impossible speed is to watch time itself slow down to a thick, heavy syrup, a visual lullaby where the frantic, rushing energy of the waking world is completely, fundamentally erased. And as you drift alongside this slow, hovering phantom, your own breathing matches its deliberate, unhurried pace. Inhale slowly, effortlessly, and exhale, letting all remaining momentum simply fade away. There is no rush here. There is nowhere to arrive. There is only this slow, perfect, endless floating so slowly, so perfectly near the ground, the owl eventually surrenders to the embrace of the earth itself. In the dry, sun-baked environments where liquid water is a rare and precious miracle, the maintenance of those perfect, silent feathers requires a different kind of bathing. When the dawn approaches and the air cools, a desert-dwelling owl will descend to a patch of impossibly fine, powdery earth. With slow, deliberate, luxurious movements, it drops its chest into the dirt, extending its majestic wings and vigorously shuffling its body. It kicks up a thick, golden cloud of dry soil, deliberately working the microscopic grains of sand deep into the base of its feathers. This is a dust bath, a vital, instinctual ritual. The fine earth acts as a natural, highly absorbent sponge, soaking up excess, heavy oils and scraping away microscopic parasites. When the owl finally stands and violently shakes its body, the dust cascades away in a beautiful, shimmering aura back to the earth, leaving the plumage perfectly separated, exquisitely soft, and flawlessly primed for another night of absolute weightless silence. Deep beneath this soft, sun-warmed soil, an acoustic illusion is being perfectly crafted in the absolute dark. We return to the long, winding, subterranean tunnels of the burrowing owl, where the vulnerable, flightless chicks are left alone in the earthen chambers, while their parents hunt beneath the stars. When the heavy, terrifying footfalls of a digging predator, perhaps a badger or a coyote, vibrate through the roof of the tunnel, the tiny chicks do not panic. They do not desperately flee deeper into the dead-end dark. Instead, they draw in a collective, deep breath, and together they release a harsh, rapid, incredibly loud hissing sound that echoes up the earthen walls. To the hungry predator digging above, this specific vibrating frequency is unmistakable. It sounds exactly, flawlessly like the terrifying, deadly rattle of a massive coiled rattlesnake hiding in the dark. It is a brilliant, terrifying acoustic shield, an ancestral genetic memory of fear perfectly weaponized by helpless chicks, instantly convincing the predator to abandon the hunt and leaving the babies perfectly safe in their borrowed underground fortress. The dry, echoing sound of the earth dissolves beautifully into the heavy, humid, intoxicating shadows of the deep equatorial rainforest, where visual camouflage takes on a completely different theatrical elegance. High in the twisting, vine-draped mahogany trees of the Amazon basin sits the spectacled owl. Unlike the intricate, bark-like mottling of its northern cousins, this magnificent creature is painted in bold, sweeping, high-contrast blocks of colour. Its chest is a rich, warm, unbroken golden amber, while its back and head are the deepest, most saturated chocolate brown. But its namesake is a stunning, brilliant white pattern that sweeps completely around its large golden eyes, forming a flawless, stark white mask against the dark feathers. In the dappled, chaotic moonlight filtering through the dense jungle canopy, this high-contrast mask is a masterpiece of disruptive coloration. It violently breaks the outline of the bird's head, confusing the eye of the observer. It is a creature wearing the moon itself as a disguise, looking like a painted spirit of the jungle, a guardian of the ancient breathing rainforest watching silently from behind a beautiful theatrical veil. And as the heavy, humid air of the rainforest surrounds you, you feel a deep, warm comfort settling into your bones. The vibrant life of the jungle hums a slow, rhythmic lullaby, and your mind easily, willingly accepts the deep, beautiful shadows falling softly over your eyes. The heavy, humid canopy of the jungle slowly thins, transforming across the globe into the ancient, snow-laden, freezing forests of the Far East. Here, wading directly into the icy, mist-shrouded rivers of Hokkaido, Japan, stands an absolute titan of the avian world, Blakiston's fish owl. This is the largest, most massive owl on the face of the earth, a creature so impossibly huge that its wingspan rivals that of a golden eagle. To the indigenous Ainu people of the region, this colossal, fiercely tufted bird was not merely an animal. It was revered as a kamui, a powerful divine spirit that guarded the villages and the rivers. When it hunts, it does not drop silently from the sky. It wades boldly, heavily into the freezing, rushing shallows, feeling the icy water rushing against its massive, scaly, unfeathered legs, staring fiercely into the dark currents to strike at massive salmon. It is a prehistoric, magnificent force of nature, an ancient feathered god of the river whose deep, booming, territorial call vibrates through the snowy valleys like thunder trapped in the ice. The icy waters of the river eventually still, freezing completely solid under the darkest phase of the moon, inviting the ultimate profound surrender to the cold. When the deepest, most punishing freeze of the winter finally locks the forest in ice, and food becomes impossibly scarce, some species of owls possess a final, miraculous defense against the dying of the light. They do not fight the cold, they completely, beautifully yield to it. By finding a deeply protected, hollowed cavity, they intentionally gradually lower their own core body temperature. They slow their breathing to a shallow, nearly imperceptible whisper. Their rapid, pulsing heartbeat, which normally races to power their flight, slows down to a single, quiet, rhythmic drumbeat echoing softly in their chest. They enter a state of deep, metabolic torpor. They are perfectly suspended between the waking world and the endless dark, conserving every microscopic drop of their vital energy, trusting completely that the warmth of the spring will eventually return to wake them. Just as the forest guardian surrenders to the deep, slow rhythm of the winter, so too does your own body surrender to the night. Your heart beats in a slow, steady, comforting rhythm. Your breathing is shallow, peaceful, and perfectly aligned with the silence of the room. You're conserving your energy, sinking deeply, beautifully into the necessary restorative torpor of a perfect, unbroken sleep. The deep restorative torpor of the winter settles into the very marrow of the earth, holding the forest in a crystalline, breathless embrace, until the first, invisible stirrings of the spring sun begin to vibrate through the frozen soil. As the light returns, it reveals a fascinating, hidden complexity within the very architecture of the owl's home. We often think of these creatures as solitary, but the magnificent great-horned owl shares its domain with a microscopic, industrious civilization. Within the soft, discarded debris of their nests, the fur, the pellets, and the shed down, there exists a thriving ecosystem of specialized beetles and moths. These tiny, silent scavengers act as the owl's internal janitors, meticulously breaking down the organic remnants of the night's hunt. They prevent the build-up of bacteria and parasites, ensuring the hollow remains a clean, healthy sanctuary for the next generation. It is a profound, circular relationship, a miniature world where even the smallest creature plays a vital role in maintaining the majesty of the apex predator, weaving a web of life that thrives in the quietest, darkest corners of the wood. The intricate, busy movements of these tiny janitors leads our awareness to the miraculous, fluid mechanics of the owl's own internal systems. In the biting chill of the midnight hour, when the air is sharp enough to crack stone, the owl maintains a core temperature that is surprisingly high, often reaching over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. To keep this vital warmth from escaping through their unfeathered scaly legs, they employ a brilliant biological heat exchanger known as the rete mirabi. Within the narrow confines of their legs, the warm oxygenated blood flowing down from the heart runs in a dense, complex braid directly alongside the cold, returning blood from the feet. Through a process of countercurrent exchange, the warmth is transferred from the descending arteries to the ascending veins before it ever reaches the cold extremities. The heat stays trapped in the core, while the feet remain safely chilled, preventing the bird from losing its life force to the hungry winter air. It is a masterclass in thermal conservation, a quiet inner fire that never goes out, even when the world is encased in a shell of solid ice. And as this knowledge settles, your own breathing slows, your body finding its own perfect internal equilibrium. You can feel the warmth of your own core radiating outward, wrapped in a soft protective layer of stillness. You are your own sanctuary, perfectly balanced, perfectly warm, and entirely at peace. The hidden, braided vessels of the legs eventually meet the rough, ancient surface of the world's most mysterious trees. We drift across the silver-lit plains of South America to find the burrowing owl once again, but this time we look beyond its earthen tunnel to its remarkable visual storytelling. Unlike any other raptor, these small, long-legged owls are the only species known to exhibit a truly striking high-contrast white brow and chin patch that they use for silent, long-distance communication. In the low light of the crepuscular hours, when sound might attract a distant predator, the owl will rapidly bob its head or puff out these brilliant white feathers. Against the dark, earthy tones of the prairie, these white patches flash like a biological lighthouse, signalling territorial boundaries or mating readiness to other owls miles away. It is a language of light and motion, a silent, flickering semaphore that allows them to speak across the vast, echoing distances of the plains without ever breaking the sacred silence of the night. While the light signals across the prairie, a different kind of illumination is taking place deep within the genetic history of the forest. The texture of time feels different when we consider that owls are one of the oldest lineages of birds still gracing our skies today. Paleontological records reveal that the ancestors of the modern owl were already masters of the twilight nearly 60 million years ago, shortly after the disappearance of the great dinosaurs. They have watched the rise and fall of mountain ranges. They have seen the glaciers advance and retreat in a slow, rhythmic dance across the continents. To look into the eyes of an owl is to look into a living bridge that spans the vastness of the Cenozoic era. They are the eternal witnesses, a lineage that found perfection early and chose to hold on to it, reminding us that true wisdom is not found in constant change, but in the quiet, enduring strength of an ancient, well-practiced soul. The weight of these 60 million years pulls our gaze upward, away from the earth and toward the infinite, swirling tapestry of the stars. In many indigenous cultures across the Pacific Northwest, the owl was not seen merely as a bird, but as the night eagle, a celestial navigator capable of flying between the physical world and the realm of the spirit. Because they can see what is hidden to all others, they were believed to be the keepers of the stars themselves. When a great grey owl glides across the face of the Milky Way, its vast, silent wings seem to brush against the very fabric of the cosmos. This spiritual connection is mirrored in their biology. They possess a magnetic sense, a biological compass hidden within their brains that allows them to feel the invisible, magnetic ley lines of the Earth. They navigate the globe by the pull of the stars and the pulse of the planet, moving with a celestial certainty that makes the entire universe feel like a familiar, well-trodden path. As you visualize this celestial journey, you feel a profound sense of vastness opening up within you. The boundaries of your thoughts expanding until they are as wide as the starlit sky. You are drifting among the stars, weightless, timeless, and perfectly guided by a quiet inner North Star that leads you deeper into the dark. the cold, distant light of the stars eventually filters down through the thick, humid mists of the tropical cloud forests, arriving at the stunning, oversized ears of the Stygian owl. Named after the river Styx, the legendary boundary between Earth and the underworld, this owl is a creature of deep, saturated shadows. Its most striking feature is a pair of incredibly long, feathered ear tufts that it can raise so high they resemble the horns of a mythical fawn. But more fascinating is the way this owl utilizes the very sound of the forest to hide its presence. It often perches near rushing waterfalls or heavy rustling foliage, using the white noise of the environment to mask the faint sound of its own breathing and the soft clicking of its beak. It is a master of acoustic blending, realizing that the best way to be silent is to become a part of the world's own natural music. It sits in the mist, a dark horned phantom perfectly synchronized with the roaring water, proving that there is a deep protective power in learning to vibrate at the same frequency as the world around you. Echoing this silence is a remarkable hidden physical trait that protects the owl during the most violent moments of the hunt. When an owl strikes its prey, the physical impact can be staggering, equivalent to several times the bird's own body weight. To protect their sophisticated, delicate brains from the shock of this collision, owls possess an internal suspension system. Their skulls are filled with pockets of air and reinforced with a spongy trabecular bone structure that acts as a biological shock absorber. Furthermore, the articulation between their beak and their skull is not rigid. It possesses a degree of flex, allowing the energy of the impact to be dissipated safely across the entire skeletal frame. It is a design of incredible resilience. A creature built to endure the sudden, jarring intensities of life while maintaining a core of absolute, unshakable stillness. The resilience of the skull is matched by a startling, beautiful flexibility in the way they perceive the passage of the day. We often assume that the bright sun is the owl's enemy, but many species engage in a ritual known as sun greening. On a crisp, clear morning, a great horned owl will find a sun-drenched ledge, spread its massive wings to their fullest extent, and tilt its head back in a state of apparent ecstasy. This is not just for warmth. The intense ultraviolet radiation of the sun helps to trigger the production of vitamin D in the oils of their skin, and the heat causes any microscopic parasites to move, making them easier to remove during preening. They take the energy of the sun and fold it into the feathers of the night. It is a beautiful, paradoxical moment. The Lord of the Shadows basking in the golden glory of the light, reminding us that even the most nocturnal soul needs to occasionally open itself to the sun to stay strong, healthy, and whole. While the sun warms the feathers, the air around the owl carries a secret chemical signature that we're only just beginning to understand. Recent research into the world of avian biology suggests that while owls have a limited sense of smell for hunting, they may use chemical eavesdropping to understand the health of their forest. When trees are attacked by pests, they release specific volatile organic compounds, essentially a chemical scream. It is believed that some owls can detect these subtle shifts in the air's chemistry, leading them to areas where prey might be more active or where the forest is in transition. They are breathing in the very thoughts of the trees, sensing the invisible aromatic pulse of the ecosystem's health. They do not just live in the forest, they are a part of its very breath, a silent feathered lung that feels the rise and fall of the woods with every slow, measured inhalation. And as the forest breathes, so do you. A slow, rhythmic tide of air moving in and out, connecting you to the ancient, steady pulse of the earth. You are inhaling the quiet wisdom of the trees, exhaling the noise of the world, sinking deeper into the soft, fragrant soil of a dreamless, perfect sleep. The aromatic breath of the forest eventually leads us back to the most intimate domestic mystery of the owl's life, the incredible, long-term memory of their home. An owl can return to the exact same nesting hollow, year after year, for over a decade, navigating through thousands of miles of shifting landscapes to find one specific, rotting knot in a single oak tree. This is not just instinct, it is a profound spatial intelligence. They map their world in sound pictures and light maps that remain etched in their minds forever. They possess a deep, unbreakable sense of belonging, a mental anchor that always knows the way back to the centre. As the final sliver of the moon begins to set and the 101 truths of the night settle into the vast library of your subconscious, remember this. Like the owl, you also possess an inner map that knows the way to peace. You have reached your destination. The hollow is warm, the night is silent, and the journey is complete. You are home, you are safe, you are asleep. But even within this perfect, dreamless sleep, the deep architecture of the night continues to beautifully unfold. The heavy, comforting darkness of the hollow is never truly absolute. When a solitary, fragile beam of distant starlight manages to pierce the dense, overlapping canopy of the pines, striking the wide, unblinking eye of the hunter, the light does not simply vanish into the black void of the pupil. It travels smoothly through the dense forest of photoreceptors and strikes a miraculous biological mirror lining the very back of the eye. This hidden, shimmering layer is the tapetum lucidum. It is an iridescent curtain, often glowing with a haunting pale green or a fiery, smouldering amber brilliance. Its purpose is elegantly simple and profoundly beautiful. It takes that single, fragile beam of starlight and bounces it directly back through the retina a second time. The owl literally recycles the light. In a shadowy world where illumination is the rarest and most precious of currencies, the owl's eye wastes absolutely nothing, capturing the faint, wandering ghosts of the stars and doubling their power to paint the forest floor in vivid shades of luminous, vibrating grey. The profound, absolute efficiency of this recycled light is perfectly mirrored in the deep, unseen pathways of the owl's physical form. If we trace the journey of sustenance from the sharply curved, polished beak down into the heavy warmth of the body, we find a remarkable absence, a streamlined perfection unique among the avian kingdom. Most foraging birds possess a crop, a muscular pouch located near the base of the throat, a biological waiting room where food is temporarily stored, held, and slowly softened before it truly enters the digestive tract. The owl, however, has entirely abandoned this anatomical middle ground. They possess no crop whatsoever. When they swallow their hard-won meal, it travels directly, immediately into the powerful, cavernous, churning chambers of the stomach. There is no hesitation, no waiting, no temporary storage. It is a biology of sheer, unadulterated directness. They take in the offering of the forest and immediately begin to weave its raw energy into their own, an uninterrupted rushing flow from the wild earth directly into the beating, feathered heart of the predator. This immediate total ownership of the night's offering is beautifully expressed in a physical ritual of absolute sweeping protection. When a goshawk or a falcon secures a meal on the forest floor, they stand tall, nervous, ever watchful, ready to frantically flee at the first snapping twig. But when an owl strikes the damp earth, it performs a dramatic, sweeping, deeply theatrical gesture known as mantling. It lowers its large, rounded head, drops its heavy shoulders, and fully extends its massive, heavily patterned wings, bringing the soft, frayed tips entirely down to the mossy ground. It transforms its own body into a vast feathered umbrella, creating a perfectly dark enclosed tent that completely shields its prize from the jealous, prying eyes of the surrounding forest. Beneath this heavy canopy of stretched wings, the owl creates a private, isolated sanctuary in the middle of the chaotic woods. It is a stunning visual display of absolute possession, a deliberate casting of a deep, impenetrable shadow over the damp earth, drawing a quiet circle of dominance that nothing in the woods would dare to cross. And as this heavy, protective shadow softly blankets the earth, your own breathing slows, deepening into a steady, rhythmic, comforting pulse. You're entirely enveloped within your own quiet canopy. Nothing from the waking, rushing world can cross this threshold. You're held safely in the dark, perfectly shielded, perfectly still, perfectly at peace. The absolute edge of that heavy shielding shadow is defined by the most delicate microscopic precision. When the mantling owl finally lifts its vast wings to return to the high, safe branches of the canopy, it must navigate the tangled, chaotic, vertical maze of the forest trunks without making a sound. To do this, it calls upon a tiny, seemingly insignificant cluster of stiff feathers attached to what is essentially the bird's thumb. This is the ulula, or the bastard wing. As the owl pitches its heavy body sharply upward, dangerously slowing its momentum to land on a narrow swaying perch, it automatically deploys this tiny rigid tuft. The ulula pops out outward from the leading edge of the massive wing, creating a microscopic aerodynamic slot. This tiny intentional gap forces a high-speed stream of smooth air tightly over the top of the wing, instantly preventing the catastrophic turbulence that would cause any other heavy bird to stall and fall from the sky. It is a microscopic adjustment, a mere fraction of an inch of feathers, that completely rewrites the heavy laws of physics, allowing the raptor to float upward with the slow, impossible, weightless grace of a rising ember. The smooth, uninterrupted flow of air over the wing eventually meets the solid, hidden architecture of the skull. An ancient architecture that has been completely, radically warped by the relentless, demanding pressure of the dark. We have marvelled at the asymmetrical placement of their fleshy ear openings beneath the feathers, but in deeply nocturnal species like the boreal owl, the pursuit of perfect hearing has literally physically reshaped the heavy calcium of their bones. If you were to gently run your hands over the smooth, bare skull of this northern hunter, you would not find the balanced, perfectly mirrored symmetry we expect from nature. The bone on the right side of the head is dramatically larger, flared out and carved like a bony parabolic radar dish, while the left side is positioned completely differently, tucked low and angled sharply downward. Their very skeleton is heavily distorted, twisted beautifully and permanently into a lifelong listen. They are physically, structurally moulded by the invisible geometry of sound, proving that the deepest adaptations are not just worn on the surface of the feathers, but are carved directly into the ancient silent bone. Inside that beautifully twisted listening bone, the soft, pulsing tissues of the brain are quietly translating the faintest whispers of the forest into a vivid, physical map of reality. Deep within the owl's midbrain lies a tiny, highly concentrated region known as the inferior colliculus. Within this microscopic cluster of tissue, millions of highly specialized neurons are arranged in a perfect, staggering three-dimensional grid. This is the neural map of auditory space. It is not just a biological processor of noise, it is a literal, topographical map of the world outside drawn entirely in electricity and biology. When a dry leaf crunches 30 feet to the left and 10 feet below the branch, a specific single neuron in the very bottom left corner of this brain grid suddenly flashes with brilliant light. The owl does not have to consciously think about where the sound is coming from. Its brain physically illuminates the exact geometric location in a split-second flash of neural fire. It is a flawless, instantaneous translation of the chaotic, unseen world into a perfect, quiet, internal certainty. As the complex grid of the forest perfectly seamlessly aligns within the owl's mind, so too does your own mind gently align. All the scattered, racing, disjointed thoughts of the day are finding their quiet, proper places, slotting smoothly into the dark, leaving behind a vast, empty, peaceful space that feels infinitely light and perfectly clear. The sudden, microscopic flash of a firing neuron is mirrored perfectly in the macro world, painting the heavy darkness with a startling, ghostly luminescence. When we picture a stealthy ambush predator, we naturally imagine a creature perfectly camouflaged in blacks and browns, melting entirely into the background of the night. But the barn owl, a phantom that patrols the vast, open agricultural fields, utilizes the exact opposite strategy. The entire underside of this magnificent bird, its chest, its belly, the massive undersides of its sweeping wings, is a canvas of the purest, most blinding, unblemished white down. On a crisp night illuminated by a brilliant full silver moon, this white plumage does not hide the bird. It acts as a massive flying reflector. As the owl drops silently from the sky toward a field mouse hiding in the tall grass, the moonlight catches this vast expanse of white, creating a sudden, blinding flash of light directly above the prey. For a crucial fraction of a second, the terrified creature is frozen, completely stunned by this unexpected, brilliant illumination in the dead of night. It is flash coloration weaponized, a predator that hunts not just with sharp talons, but with the paralyzing, brilliant reflection of the moon itself. The ghostly pale flash of white sweeping across the lonely fog-drenched moors has captured the human imagination for millennia, weaving the owl deeply into the oldest, coldest mythologies of the world. In the ancient, rugged, windswept highlands of Celtic lore, the owl was not feared as a dark omen, but was deeply, profoundly respected as the sacred companion of the Cailleach, the great veiled goddess of the winter months. She was the divine ancient architect of the frost, the bringer of the heavy burying snows and the quiet resting dark. The ancient Celts believed that the owl was her eyes and ears in the physical world, a shape-shifting spirit that carried the heavy, necessary silence of the winter across the frozen glens. To see an owl resting silently in a barren leafless oak tree was to see the Cailleach herself, patiently watching over the sleeping earth, ensuring that the necessary freezing purification of the winter was carrying out its vital work. They understood that the piercing cold and the long nights were not a punishment, but a deep protective slumber, a sacred resting period guarded vigilantly by the white phantom of the frost. The firm, unyielding stewardship of the winter goddess is made entirely, brutally physical in the breathtaking, almost mechanical power hidden within the owl's soft feathered feet. We know their talons are razor sharp, designed to lock without conscious effort, but the sheer, muscular force driving those blades is a marvel of biological engineering. When a massive great-horned owl finally closes its grip upon its quarry, the pressure exerted by its thick, heavily muscled toes is truly staggering. It has been scientifically measured at roughly 300 pounds per square inch. To put this tremendous, crushing force into perspective, it easily eclipses the bite force of an average domestic dog and is more than enough to instantly, painlessly snap the solid spine of a large mammal. It is a grip of absolute, undeniable finality. Yet, it is deployed with such stunning, silent grace that the overwhelming violence of the act is completely masked. It is a profound, grounding embrace, a vice of living bone and sinew that holds the physical world with an unbreakable sovereign authority. And as you consider that firm, unbreakable, grounding hold, you feel the earth rising up to hold you with that exact same, unyielding certainty. You are completely, flawlessly supported. Gravity holding you safely, firmly in place, allowing every single muscle in your body to completely let go, knowing with absolute certainty that you will not fall. The grounding, heavy embrace of the earth is occasionally softened by the sweet silver touch of the falling rain. While we have seen the desert-dwelling owls bathing in the dry, golden dust of the plains, the forest-dwelling owls possess a deep, almost joyful affinity for the clean, purifying touch of liquid water. On a humid, heavy night, after a torrential summer downpour has passed and the lush woods are dripping with life, a large barred owl will actively seek out a shallow moonlit pool formed in the hollow of an ancient moss-covered rock. It steps carefully into the cold, black water, dipping its heavy chest and vigorously beating its massive wings against the surface. It sends beautiful showers of silver droplets flying into the dark, completely soaking its usually pristine, dry plumage. It is a rare moment of total vulnerability, as the heavy, wet feathers temporarily ground the magnificent flyer. But it is a necessary, deeply refreshing ritual. The cool water washes away the microscopic dust of the hunt, cooling the hot skin and renewing the spirit. When the owl finally steps from the rippling pool, heavily shaking the water from its body in a fine mist, it climbs slowly back into the canopy to dry in the soft breeze, completely clean, entirely renewed, and perfectly prepared for whatever the long, quiet night still holds. The damp, clean feathers slowly drying in the gentle breeze of the high canopy. They do not simply dry, they meticulously, beautifully rebuild themselves in the dark. When the barred owl shakes off the cool silver droplets of the forest pool, its vital flight feathers might occasionally separate, the flawless aerodynamic surface breaking into jagged, inefficient gaps. But within the microscopic architecture of the keratin, a miracle of spontaneous tactile repair waits to be activated. Each individual barb extending from the feather's central shaft is lined with thousands of tiny interlocking hooks, known in biology as barber cells. As the owl draws the frayed broken feather slowly and deliberately through its sharply curved beak, these microscopic hooks catch and lock together, zipping the feather completely closed, exactly like the teeth of a flawless organic zipper. In a single, slow, meditative movement, the broken surface is instantly restored to an impenetrable, silky smooth shield against the rushing wind. A quiet, nightly ritual of gently mending what the chaotic world has pulled apart. This delicate, microscopic mending allows the owl to launch back into the abyss, guided entirely by the massive glowing orbs that completely dominate its skull. We have marvelled at their binocular power and their deep, tubular shape, but the sheer physical volume of these eyes is almost beyond human comprehension. If human eyes took up the same massive proportion of our skulls as an owl's eyes do in theirs, they would be the size of large, heavy grapefruits resting in our faces. In fact, within the delicate, bone-laced vault of the owl's head, the eyes are so impossibly large that they are actually heavier and take up significantly more physical space than the animal's entire brain. They are creatures literally built around their vision, sacrificing the dense, heavy grey matter of higher reasoning for the absolute terrifying perfection of sight. They do not overthink the complicated geometry of the forest. They simply, completely, and flawlessly observe it. And as they observe the deep, shifting shadows of the night, they see a world far richer than the stark, monochromatic grey we so often imagine. It is a very common misconception that all nocturnal hunters are completely colourblind, trapped in a bleak, lifeless landscape of black and white. But the owl's massive, light-gathering retina retains a small, crucial number of cone cells, the microscopic biological receptors responsible for decoding the beautiful, vibrant spectrum of colour. Even in the dimmest, most bruised purple light of the midnight hour, they can still perceive subtle, washed-out hues. They can clearly distinguish the faint, warm rust of a dormant moth resting against the cool, blue-grey bark of an ancient cedar tree. They live in a world painted in soft, muted, ghostly pastels, proving that even in the deepest, most absolute dark, the universe never completely loses its vibrant, painted beauty. And as the soft, muted pastels of this quiet world gently wash over your mind, your own thoughts begin to lose their sharp, blinding glare. You're sinking beautifully into that same comforting twilight, where everything is soft, everything is muted, and your heavy, resting body feels perfectly, flawlessly held by the gentle shadows. The painted, ghostly beauty of the high canopy eventually drifts downward, settling softly onto the rich, decaying loam of the forest floor. Here, beneath the favourite roosting branch of a barn owl, lies a scattered, hidden treasury of dry, odourless pellets. To the untrained, rushing eye, they are simply the discarded remnants of a meal, but to the patient, observing scientist, they are biological gold mines. Because the owl hunts with such sweeping, flawless efficiency across vast, impenetrable tracts of land, it often captures small, elusive creatures that completely evade human detection. Over the decades, biologists meticulously dissecting these fragile, furry time capsules have discovered entirely new, previously unrecorded species of shrews, voles, and rare nocturnal rodents. The owl is essentially a flying, silent taxonomist, a creature that surveys the deepest, most hidden corners of the earth, bringing the unknown, whispered secrets of the brush directly to the surface in a perfectly wrapped, dry bundle of fur and bone. This silent winged survey spans almost the entire breathtaking expanse of our blue planet. If you were to trace the shadow of the owl across a spinning globe, you would find them hunting gracefully in the dense, dripping emerald jungles of the equator and resting atop the shifting golden dunes of the Sahara. You would find them surviving in the dizzying, snow-capped altitudes of the Himalayas and thriving deep within the neon-lit concrete canyons of our largest, loudest cities. They have successfully conquered every single continent, every single major landmass on the face of the Earth, save for one, Antarctica. The absolute freezing limit of the world, where the massive ice shelves stretch endlessly into the black ocean, remains the only place untouched by their silent, sweeping wings. It is a striking, beautiful boundary, a reminder that even the most perfect, adaptable master of the dark knows exactly where its dominion ends, respecting the total, desolate, empty void of the deep southern ice. The vast, empty void of the southern ice shatters, dissolving warmly into the dense, tangled, sun-baked mesquite thickets of the southern deserts. Here, a tiny, fierce rebel of the owl world completely rewrites the heavy, sweeping rules of ghostly flight. The ferruginous pygmy owl, a hunter so incredibly small it can fit comfortably within the palm of your hand, does not float through the air with the slow, suspended, weightless glide of its larger cousins. Instead, it flies with a rapid, chaotic, undulating rhythm. It beats its tiny, rounded wings furiously, rising and dipping through the air in a deep, wave-like pattern, mimicking exactly the frantic, bouncing flight of a woodpecker. It is an exquisite, intentional disguise in motion, confusing the sharp-eyed hawks that circle high above, completely hiding its true predatory identity within the erratic, bouncing heartbeat of a harmless, frightened songbird. The gentle, rising and falling rhythm of that tiny flight perfectly matches the slow, natural rising and falling of your own chest. Every deep breath in is a soft, buoyant rise. Every long breath out is a peaceful, floating descent. You're riding this gentle, undulating wave, drifting effortlessly, beautifully deeper and deeper into the calm. The erratic, bouncing rhythm of the tiny wings leads us to the subtle, almost imperceptible movements hidden deeply beneath the soft facial feathers of the canopy giants. We know of their incredibly asymmetrical skulls, carved by the desperate need to pinpoint sound, but their auditory mastery extends all the way to the very surface of their skin. Covering the massive, gaping ear cavities on the sides of their heads are thick, fleshy flaps of skin known in anatomy as opercula. These are not static, lifeless structures. They are highly muscular and completely under the owl's conscious, deliberate control. The bird can open and close these flaps independently, exactly like pulling thick, heavy velvet curtains across a theatre stage. By subtly adjusting these acoustic blinds, they actively filter out the useless, rushing noise of the wind or the rustling leaves, tuning their biological radar with agonizing, microscopic precision to hear only the exact, vital frequency of their chosen prey in the dark. The heavy velvet curtains of the ear slowly close, bringing a deep, protective, absolute silence that surrounds the most sacred, vulnerable heart of their domain, the nest. As we watch a pair of majestic, great-horned owls sharing the quiet duties of the twilight, a striking physical imbalance becomes beautifully clear. In the vast majority of the mammalian and avian kingdom, The males are the massive, physically imposing defenders. But in the ancient realm of the owl, this biological rule is entirely purposefully inverted. This phenomenon is known as reversed sexual dimorphism. The female owl is significantly larger, heavier, and far more powerfully built than her mate. She is the dense, immovable, feathered fortress, designed by thousands of years of evolution to sit like a heavy, warm boulder over the fragile eggs, easily capable of repelling massive predators with her sheer, crushing bulk. The smaller, much more agile male becomes the swift, darting provider, perfectly designed to navigate the dense, tangled branches at high speeds to secure the harvest. It is a perfect, beautiful balance of power, a true, profound partnership where absolute strength and absolute agility rely completely and entirely upon one another. The absolute physical strength of the heavy female is reinforced by an invisible, impenetrable armour woven deeply into her very fluff. As she guards the nest in the dense, suffocating, oppressive humidity of the Central American rainforest, she is constantly surrounded by microscopic and nocturnal threats, including the silent, creeping approach of the parasitic vampire bat. But the resting giant owl remains entirely blissfully unharmed. The secret lies in the staggering immense density of her plumulaceous down, the thick cloud-like underfeathers that keep her eggs warm. This specific layer is so incredibly deep and dense that it completely masks the radiant heat of her own pulsing blood vessels. The vampire bat's highly specialized heat-sensing nose simply cannot find a target. The massive, breathing owl appears as nothing more than a cold, lifeless stone to the parasites of the night. She's biologically cloaked in her own extreme softness, proving that sometimes the ultimate unbreakable defense in a harsh world is simply an overwhelming, profound layer of gentleness. This profound, protective gentleness echoes across the globe, reaching the deepest, most freezing expanses of the Arctic snows, where the white phantom of the tundra was revered not merely as a fierce hunter, but as a divine saviour of the lost. In the ancient whispered stories of the Inuit people, passed down through generations around the glowing fire, the snowy owl was deeply believed to be a benevolent guiding spirit. When a weary hunter found themselves completely lost in the blinding, disorienting chaos of a whiteout blizzard, with the freezing cold threatening to pull them into the final eternal dark, the sudden, silent appearance of the great white owl was a signal of profound, overwhelming hope. The bird would fly low, its massive, brilliant wings cutting a clear visual path through the howling storm, gently guiding the lost soul safely back to the warm, glowing hearth of their village. They were the silent, feathered shepherds of the ice, a beautiful, enduring legend proving that even in the most terrifying, blinding storms of our lives, there is always a quiet, unseen guide waiting patiently in the dark, ready to gently lead us back home. The profound, enduring comfort of that ancient, unseen guide eventually leads us far beneath the surface of the waking world, down into the deep, echoing limestone caverns of the earth itself. The air here is heavy, cool, and smells of ancient damp minerals and forgotten time. If we travel back through the heavy mists of history, 30,000 years into the deep Paleolithic past, we arrive deep within the dark, winding belly of the Chauvet Cave in southern France. Here, illuminated by the flickering, dancing, warm orange glow of a primitive torch, we find the very first time humanity ever tried to capture the magic of the night sky. Pressed directly into the soft, wet, yielding clay of the cavern wall is a flawless, unmistakable engraving of an owl. A human finger, thick with mud and quiet reverence, carefully traced its rounded head, its curved back, and its profound, watchful stillness. The flickering firelight makes the ancient mud carving seem to breathe, shifting the heavy shadows along the wall, proving that our deep, hypnotic, unexplainable connection to this bird is quite literally carved into the very foundation of our shared human history. The soft, yielding clay of that ancient cave wall slowly softens further, dissolving seamlessly into the warm, incredibly delicate overlapping feathers of two beautiful creatures sharing the absolute quiet of the canopy. While the owl is the undisputed solitary master of the hunt, the hours of rest reveal a hidden, breathtakingly tender language of physical connection. When a mated pair of tawny owls sits together on a high, moonlit branch, bathed in the silver light of the midnight hour, they engage in a deep, rhythmic, meditative ritual known as allopreening. With agonizing, exquisite slowness, one owl will lean forward, closing its massive eyes completely, and allow its partner to gently, meticulously nibble the microscopic, hard-to-reach feathers around its facial disc and the nape of its neck. It is an act of total, unshielded vulnerability, a gentle, physical reassurance that triggers a rush of calming, peaceful endorphins, weaving an invisible, unbreakable bond of trust through the simple, repetitive act of gentle, focused care. As the mated pair finally surrenders entirely to this deep, trusting peace, we can observe the heavy, velvety mechanics of their slumber and discover a beautiful biological inversion of our own reality. When humans finally give way to exhaustion, our heavy upper eyelids drop downward, pulling a curtain over the bright waking world. But when the owl decides to cross the threshold into deep sleep, it is the lower eyelid that slowly, languidly rises upward. The soft, heavily feathered skin pulls smoothly up from the cheek, rising like a dark, inevitable rising tide to meet the upper lid, sealing the massive, glowing golden eye in a state of absolute, peaceful darkness. It is a slow, upward sweep of soft velvet, a physical, biological metaphor for rising completely out of the waking world and floating upward into the vast, drifting, limitless expanse of the dreamscape. And as those heavy velvet eyelids slowly, smoothly close, your own eyes feel that exact same irresistible, comforting weight. The desperate need to look, the need to focus, simply washes away into the dark, leaving you perfectly content to let the heavy, warm tide of sleep rise up and hold you safely in its gentle embrace. The heavy, enveloping warmth of that deep sleep occasionally needs to be softly, gently released into the cool night air. In the sweltering, airless nights of the deep southern swamps, where the Spanish moss hangs motionless in the oppressive, humid heat, like pale silver ghosts, the thick, downy armour of the owl becomes a heavy, suffocating burden. Because they possess absolutely no sweat glands to cool their skin, they rely on a mesmerizing, rhythmic manipulation of their own breath. Opening their sharply curved, polished beaks just a fraction of an inch, they engage in a behaviour known as gular fluttering. The soft, highly flexible tissues deep within their throats begin to vibrate at an incredibly rapid, hypnotic frequency. This continuous rhythmic fluttering rapidly evaporates the internal moisture, pushing the hot, trapped air out into the cool silver relief of the moonlight. It is a visible, vibrating hum of physical release, a continuous soothing out-breath that perfectly regulates the core, shedding the heavy heat of the day into the forgiving, endless dark. The slow, rhythmic release of that heavy heat draws us instantly across the globe to the profound, absolute, breathtaking cold of the northern taiga. Here, a massive great grey owl hovers silently, beautifully suspended over a vast, perfectly smooth, unbroken ocean of glittering white snow. The landscape is dead, silent, and frozen solid. Yet, the owl's asymmetrical ears catch the microscopic, impossible sound of a tiny, tunnelling vole scurrying beneath 2 full feet of densely packed powder. The owl does not hesitate. It does not second-guess the invisible map forming in its mind. It simply folds its massive, sweeping wings tightly against its body and drops from the sky like a heavy stone. It plunges violently, face first, entirely submerging its magnificent body into the freezing white depths, shattering the pristine surface in an explosion of crystalline powder, It is a breathtaking, awe-inspiring act of absolute total trust, diving completely blind into the freezing, burying white, guided only by the flawless, perfect certainty of what it has heard in the silence. The blinding, exploding white of the shattered snow dissolves, softening gently into a shower of warm, glowing golden sparks that drift lazily toward the ancient, incense-filled temples of India. In the rich, complex, heavily perfumed tapestry of Hindu mythology, the owl holds a place of profound, divine importance. Known as Uluka, a magnificent pure white owl is revered as the chosen Vahana, or divine mount of Lakshmi, the radiant, beautiful goddess of both spiritual and material wealth. But the owl does not represent the loud, chaotic clamour of earthly greed. Because the owl can see perfectly through the deepest, most absolute darkness, it represents the quiet, spiritual wisdom required to navigate through the blinding, dark ignorance of material obsession. To see the owl of Lakshmi is to be reminded that true, enduring wealth is not found in the bright, flashing lights of the waking world, but in the quiet, inner, guiding light of the soul. The warm, golden, radiant glow of that ancient wisdom washes slowly over you, settling deeply and permanently within your chest, leaving you feeling profoundly rich, perfectly fulfilled, and entirely, completely at peace with the quiet, resting space you inhabit right now. The golden, opulent richness of the temple slowly fades, stripping back the excess, dissolving seamlessly into the pure, fundamental biological chemistry of the owl's palate. Despite the incredibly vast, complex, highly attuned sensory world they inhabit, their sense of taste is incredibly, deliberately narrow. Deep within their genetic code, the specific receptors required to perceive sweetness have been completely, permanently erased. The sugary, overflowing nectars of the night-blooming flowers and the bright, heavy, rotting fruits of the jungle canopy are completely invisible to their tongue. They exist in a world completely devoid of sugar. They are creatures stripped of all excess, tied only to the essential, savoury, grounding elements of existence. It is a biological purity, a mind entirely unclouded by the sweet distractions of the forest, intensely focused only on the fundamental, necessary and vital requirements of life. This stripped back, entirely essential existence echoes loudly through the ancient towering eucalyptus forests of the remote Australian outback, creating a profound, unsettling auditory illusion that guards the hidden hollows. As you walk through the thick, peeling bark of the gum trees, you might hear the sudden, sharp, explosive sound of a large, aggressive dog echoing through the dark, bouncing off the rigid trunks of the ancient trees. But there is no dog. Hidden high in the canopy is the Australian barking owl. Rather than a haunting, melodic hoot, this incredible bird has evolved to release a gruff, dual-pitched call that perfectly, flawlessly mimics the deep, warning bark of a terrestrial canine. It is a brilliant auditory shield, a feathered phantom projecting the heavy, intimidating illusion of a ground-dwelling protector to instantly ward off any wandering terrestrial predators. It is the ultimate acoustic disguise, wrapping a creature of the air in the heavy, intimidating and deeply grounded voice of the earth. The heavy, grounded, intimidating illusion of the barking dog leads our drifting minds to a true, physical, and highly unusual embrace of the terrestrial world. While we so naturally imagine all owls resting securely, high up in the towering, swaying canopy of the ancient woods, the nomadic, short-eared owl descends beautifully, completely, and deliberately to the ground, deliberately. In the vast, open, rolling expanses of the silver marshlands and the windswept coastal dunes, the female will scrape a shallow, hidden bowl directly into the soft, fragrant earth. She lines this humble depression with dry grasses and the soft, plucked down from her own breast. She does not seek the lofty heights. She sleeps with her warm chest pressed directly against the slow, vibrating, deep heartbeat of the planet itself, finding her absolute sanctuary hidden low in the swaying reeds, perfectly camouflaged in the vast open embrace of the rolling plains, and as she rests her warm chest against the gentle, ancient rhythmic heartbeat of the earth, your own heartbeat effortlessly finds that exact same deep, comforting, and endless resonance. Every slow beat is grounding you, pulling you safely downward, holding you perfectly securely in the dark, warm embrace of the night. The vast, endless, open expanse of those rolling silver marshlands stretches outward, inviting the ultimate, sweeping, breathtaking journey of the night. We return to the tiny flammulated owl, a creature so impossibly small and delicate it weighs no more than a single dry autumn leaf. As the sharp, biting edge of the winter frost begins to creep across the northern pines, this microscopic hunter does not bunker down to fight the ice. Instead, it lifts off into the vast, overwhelming, starry abyss of the night sky, embarking on a staggering multi-thousand-mile migration across the dark, sleeping continent. It is a microscopic speck of life, navigating flawlessly by the shifting magnetic pull of the constellations, drifting endlessly, beautifully southward on the high, invisible, rushing rivers of the night wind, high above the sleeping cities and the silent mountains. To picture this tiny, fragile bird flying thousands of miles through the freezing dark, perfectly safe and perfectly guided, is to understand the limitless, boundless, beautiful freedom that waits for all of us when we finally close our eyes and simply let go. The boundless, sweeping freedom of that high-altitude migration. The profound feeling of drifting endlessly on the rushing, invisible rivers of the night wind eventually carries us toward the pale, brilliant, and blinding light of the northern dawn. As the deep, heavy indigo of the night sky slowly bleeds into the bright, piercing, crystalline blue of the Arctic morning, the ancient rules of the dark are temporarily suspended. Here, perched atop the sharp, jagged spire of a frosted black spruce, sits the magnificent northern hawk owl. Because it is a diurnal hunter, forced to seek its prey in the blinding, unbroken glare of the sun reflecting off the endless rolling fields of pure white snow, it has developed a brilliant biological defense woven directly into the soft feathers of its face, extending sharply downward from the inner corners of its piercing, bright yellow eyes, are thick, heavy, starkly black streaks of plumage, known in biology as malar stripes. Much like the dark, light-absorbing grease paint worn heavily beneath the eyes of athletes under bright stadium lights, these dark, velvety pathways aggressively absorb the harsh, blinding radiation of the winter sun. They pull the violent glare completely away from the sensitive cornea, allowing the owl to stare directly across the glittering diamond-like surface of the snowfields with absolute, unshielded and flawless visual clarity. The intense, piercing light of the frozen snowfield forces us to consider the immense, staggering physical pressures these perfect, massive eyes must endure during the hunt. When the northern hawk owl finally spots the minuscule tremor of a vole in the distant brush and folds its wings to dive, it accelerates to astonishing, blistering speeds. The cold, rushing wind strikes its flat face with the heavy, punishing force of a physical blow. A soft, unsupported eyeball would instantly flatten, ripple and distort under such incredible aerodynamic pressure, completely destroying the bird's vital focus at the most critical life-or-death moment of the descent. But hidden directly beneath the surface of the eye is a masterpiece of evolutionary skeletal architecture, the sclerotic ring. It is a dense, interlocking fortress of tiny, rigid, overlapping bones shaped exactly like a wide, deep, impenetrable chalice. This bony armour perfectly and rigidly cups the delicate, fluid-filled orb, locking it firmly and permanently into its deep, tubular shape. It is an unyielding, unbreakable shield hidden deep within the skull, ensuring that no matter how fast they fall through the sky, no matter how hard the violent wind pushes against them, their vision remains an absolute, perfectly calm, an undisturbed sanctuary of flawless focus. And as that absolute, undisturbed sanctuary of focus settles softly over you, your own mind becomes a perfectly calm, unyielding fortress. The rushing, chaotic noise of the waking world pushes heavily against you, but it simply cannot enter. You are locked perfectly in this quiet, safe moment, entirely protected from the wind, and drifting beautifully, effortlessly deeper into the still, heavy centre of your own rest. The heavy, rigid, unyielding pressure of the dive is eventually beautifully released in a moment of slow, deliberate, and deeply familiar physical relaxation. If you were to sit perfectly still in the forest and watch an owl resting quietly in the dappled, golden afternoon light, you might suddenly see it open its sharply hooked beak impossibly wide, stretching its neck forward and closing its massive eyes in what looks exactly like a deeply satisfying, entirely human yawn. But this slow, gaping stretch is not born of boredom, nor is it a simple sign of exhaustion. It is a vital, precise, and highly calculated muscular calibration. The iconic facial disc of the owl is a complex biological radar dish controlled by dozens of microscopic, interlocking, highly sensitive muscles. By performing this massive stretching yawn, the owl is vigorously pulling and resetting every single one of these delicate fibres. It is smoothing the biological canvas, physically realigning the tension across its entire face to ensure that when the dark finally arrives, its acoustic receivers are flawlessly, perfectly tuned to the environment. It is a slow, luxurious stretching away of all accumulated tension, a deliberate, deeply physical preparation for the profound, heavy silence to come. The slow, luxurious stretching of the face gracefully extends into a meticulous, rhythmic, and highly meditative grooming of the entire physical body. As the twilight approaches and the owl prepares for the night's journey, it reaches its beak backward, probing deeply into the dense, thick feathers at the very base of its tail to locate a hidden, vital organ, the uropygial gland. While they do not completely coat themselves in the heavy, waterproofing oils of the river-dwelling ducks, this hidden gland secretes a rich, complex, waxy balsam. The owl carefully, delicately gathers a tiny glistening bead of this precious wax on the tip of its beak and begins to slowly, deliberately draw it through the entire length of every individual flight feather. This is not mere cleaning, it is deep, chemical conditioning. The wax deeply nourishes the dry keratin, preventing the delicate microscopic Barbie cells from becoming stiff or brittle in the biting cold of the midnight air. It maintains the absolute velvety suppleness required for their ghostly, completely silent flight. It is a quiet, rhythmic, and incredibly soothing ritual of self-care, a patient, methodical, and loving anointing of the armour before stepping out into the vast, unforgiving expanse of the wild night. The methodical, rhythmic anointing of the feathers reveals a hidden, deeply surprising truth about the very landscape of the owl's concealed skin. We naturally assume that these heavily fluffed, voluminous birds are completely and evenly covered in a thick, unbroken, suffocating carpet of down. But evolution is a master of breathtaking, elegant efficiency. The feathers of the owl do not grow randomly across the body. They sprout from the skin in highly organised, densely packed linear pathways known in avian biology as terralae. Between these thick, forested tracts of plumage lie surprisingly vast, completely bare, unfeathered patches of incredibly smooth, warm skin known as apteria. When the bird is resting calmly on its branch, the thick feathers naturally overlap and drape together, completely hiding these naked spaces and securely trapping the vital, life-giving warmth. But when the owl is engaged in heavy, sustained acrobatic flight, generating massive, dangerous amounts of internal muscular heat, it can subtly shift its physical posture to slightly open these overlapping layers. The bare patches instantly become hidden, biological exhaust vents, releasing the suffocating, building heat directly into the cool, rushing night air. It is a breathtaking system of invisible thermal regulation. A creature that can physically open its own feathered armour to breathe, ensuring it never overheats in the frantic intensity of the chase. And as those hidden vents open to seamlessly release the heat, your own body naturally releases the heavy, accumulated stress of the long, tiring day. Every slow, deliberate exhale pushes the warmth and the rigid tension out into the cool, forgiving, endless night, leaving you feeling perfectly regulated, beautifully light, and sinking deeper, deeper, deeper into the dark, soothing calm. The silent release of that heavy internal heat carries us seamlessly across the oceans, arriving in the sweltering, sun-baked, endless savannas of sub-Saharan Africa. Here, blending perfectly, flawlessly into the pale ashen grey of the ancient towering thorny acacia trees, sits Verreaux's eagle owl. It is a massive, imposing, stony giant, a creature that seems carved directly from the dry, unforgiving ancient rock of the landscape itself. But hidden deeply within this stoic, perfectly camouflaged grey exterior lies a sudden, startling, and brilliant flash of neon life. The heavy upper eyelids of this specific, magnificent bird are completely unfeathered and coloured a vibrant, fleshy, deeply saturated and unmistakable pink. When the owl sits completely motionless with its large eyes open, watching the horizon, the colour is entirely invisible. But as the heavy dust descends and the shadows lengthen, it communicates with its distant mate not with a loud, echoing hoot that would alert predators, but with a slow, deliberate, heavy blink. The sudden, brilliant flash of pink against the dead, grey bark is a silent, pulsing beacon in the twilight. It is a mesmerising, completely silent biological semaphore, a secret, vivid, and beautiful language of colour spoken entirely in the slow, heavy closing and opening of the eyes. The slow, heavy, rhythmic closing of those bright pink eyelids eventually gives way to the chaotic, vibrant, bursting, and unstoppable energy of new life opening its eyes to the vast world. Deep within the sheltered, fragrant hollows of the ancient forest, the journey of the young owl begins long, long before its heavy wings are truly ready to conquer the open sky. Weeks before their primary flight, feathers are fully hardened into rigid, aerodynamic tools. The fluffy, awkward, incredibly top-heavy owlets simply cannot contain their overwhelming, biological instinct to explore. Driven by an ancient, undeniable curiosity, they boldly throw themselves out of the absolute safety of the nest and onto the surrounding swaying branches. In this highly vulnerable, completely flightless stage of life, they are affectionately known by biologists as branchers, but they are far from helpless. Driven by pure necessity, they transform into astonishing feathered acrobats, using their powerfully hooked beaks to bite deeply into the rough, jagged bark, and their razor-sharp, double-jointed talons to grip the wood like iron hooks. They pull themselves straight up the vertical trunks of the towering pines. They climb exactly like tiny, determined, extremely fluffy parrots. It is a beautiful, clumsy, and intensely courageous phase of early life, a profound testament to the raw, driving urge to climb higher, to feel the cold wind on their faces, and to conquer the vast, terrifying vertical world one slow, deliberate, gripping step at a time. The slow, deliberate, intensely courageous climbing of the young branches is watched over constantly by a fierce, uncompromising, and absolutely terrifying maternal love. When a climbing, flightless owlet is suddenly threatened by the creeping shadow of a prowling bobcat, or the silent, slithering approach of a massive tree snake, the mother owl does not simply launch a physical attack. She undergoes a breathtaking, highly theatrical, and completely terrifying physical metamorphosis. She drops violently down to the branch directly between the approaching predator and her vulnerable young, and executes the ultimate biological threat display. She completely and entirely inverts her massive wings, twisting them unnaturally forward and locking them together tightly over her head and shoulders, forming a towering, unbroken circular shield of heavily patterned feathers. She violently fluffs every single contour feather on her entire body, effectively and instantly tripling her visual physical mass. She drops her head incredibly low, swaying rhythmically from side to side in a mesmerizing, hypnotic, pendulum-like dance, while violently snapping her sharp beak to create a sharp, echoing, bone-chilling clatter. To the terrified approaching predator, the familiar shape of a bird completely vanishes, instantly replaced by a massive, towering, impossibly wide wall of shifting shadows and glaring, unblinking, furious eyes. It is a masterpiece of psychological warfare, a desperate, beautiful mother transforming herself into a living, breathing monster to ensure the absolute, unbroken safety of the fragile life she brought into the dark. And as that towering, impenetrable, fiercely protective wall of shadows wraps securely and permanently around you, you feel a profound, overwhelming, and absolute sense of protection. You're the very centre of the forest, completely guarded, entirely and flawlessly safe. Nothing from the waking world can reach you here. The deep shadows in your room are not something to fear. They are the heavy, soft velvet wings of the night itself, folding carefully, lovingly over you, keeping you perfectly safe, keeping you perfectly warm, and pulling you deeply, beautifully, and endlessly down into the perfect, unbroken peace of a dreamless sleep. The towering, impenetrable wall of those fiercely protective feathers slowly lowers, dissolving softly into the vast, quiet breathing of the ancient woods, as we reach the final, deepest truth of our long, drifting journey together. We arrive at a profound philosophical secret written not just in the biology of the bird, but in the very soul of the earth itself. In the quiet, calculating halls of modern science, the majestic owl is classified simply as an apex predator, but to those who truly understand the language of the woods, it is revered as the ultimate indicator species. This is not merely a dry biological term. It is a profound poetic truth about the absolute interconnectedness of all living things. When a magnificent spotted owl glides silently through the heavy, dripping canopy of the old-growth redwoods, its very presence is the absolute living proof that the entire vast world beneath it is perfectly whole. An owl simply cannot exist in a broken world. For the silent hunter to thrive, there must be a flawless, unbroken chain of life stretching all the way down to the roots of the earth. There must be healthy, ancient trees with deep, hollowing cavities for shelter. Those trees must drop seeds and nuts to feed a thriving, bustling civilization of tiny creatures hidden on the forest floor. The soil must be undeniably rich, the water must be pristine, and the air must be pure. The owl is the physical manifestation of 10,000 hidden everyday miracles. If you were to trace the energy required to lift a single, weightless down feather into the night sky, you would follow a thread that travels backward through the entire ecosystem, through the rich, dark loam, through the ancient, unseen fungal networks, through the silent breathing of the ferns, and all the way back to the ancient light of the sun itself. Therefore, the owl is not just a bird living inside a forest. The owl is the forest, distilled into a single, perfect, breathing form. Every single drop of silver rain, every crumbling autumn leaf, every hidden root, and every beam of pale moonlight is physically woven into the structure of its silent wings. To look up into the high branches and see the resting guardian of the night is to look at the undeniable, beautiful completion of the natural world. It is the ultimate reassurance, a living, breathing promise that the delicate, complex balance of the earth is still holding, that the wild, untamed heart of the world is still beating, healthy, whole, and perfectly strong in the dark. And as that wild, ancient, unbroken heartbeat synchronizes perfectly with your own, you feel that exact same profound sense of completion settling deeply, permanently into your bones. The long, winding, breathtaking journey through the starlit woods has finally reached its quiet, inevitable, beautiful end. The heavy silver moon begins its slow, graceful descent, slipping softly below the edge of the world, casting its final pale, elongated shadows across the silent canopy. The vast, endless, sprawling sky above slowly transitions from the deep, bruising indigo of the midnight hour, melting softly, seamlessly into a heavy, blanketing, infinite velvet black. The wind has completely died down, leaving only the thick, fragrant scent of the pine needles resting in the crisp, motionless air. There is nothing left to search for in the empty dark. There is no need to stay vigilant, no need to listen for the rustling of the leaves. There is nothing left to learn. Nothing left to hold on to, absolutely nothing left to do. The entire vast forest is now perfectly, flawlessly still. The ancient towering pines have stopped their swaying, resting their heavy wooden bones against the sky. The silent hunters of the night have finally ended their patrol, closing their massive, glowing golden eyes, folding their magnificent, sweeping wings tightly against the evening chill, gently tucking their heavy, wise heads deep into the soft, warm, protective down of their own backs, completely and entirely surrendering to the deep, restorative, ancient quiet of the earth. You're a seamless, beautiful part of this deep quiet now. You're gently, firmly held by the exact same ancient gravity, beautifully wrapped in the exact same protective velvet shadows. Every lingering thought has finally smoothed out, becoming the flat, calm, glassy surface of a forgotten forest lake. Every single muscle in your body has melted completely, sinking heavily, comfortably into the soft, warm space perfectly designed to hold you. Your breathing is nothing but a slow, shallow, peaceful, drifting rhythm, just a quiet, rhythmic echo of the deeply resting world. You are perfectly, completely safe. You're entirely, fundamentally at peace. You have finally arrived. You're home. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.